Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 9 minutes after 3 o'clock. Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Headline with me, Aldrin Sampear. Thank you so much for choosing us this afternoon. We're with you from now up until 6 o'clock. So coming up on the show, big focus is going to be on the unemployment stats that have been released by the Statistician General, Risenga Maluleke. He will be joining us at 10 to 4. So our unemployment rate has increased to 32.1%. And as I was saying to Bridget, is remember during the State of the Nation address when the President was speaking about Dintswalo, but also about the unemployment rate in the country, and he said it is the worst that it's ever been. This means that it has become worser that it's ever been, because when the President delivered his State of the Nation address, the unemployment rate was at around 31.9%, and now it has increased by 0.2%, meaning that it is worse than what it was when he was delivering his State of the Nation address. And mind you, this comes just ahead of the budget speech that will be delivered by the Minister of Finance tomorrow. Another stat that really shocked me is the unemployment stats, or unemployment rate, the unemployment rate amongst black people. It has increased by nearly 10% since 2013. 10% since 2013. 27.1% in 2013 up to 36.1% in 2023. And amongst the other race populations, amongst the colored people, it was at 23% in 2013, and it increased slightly to 21.7% in 2023. Amongst the Indian population at 12.5% in 2013, and declined to 11.7% in this is now 11.7% in 2023, and then amongst the white population 7.2% in 2013, and a slight increase to 8.5%. So you see, there are these slight changes that happens in the other race groups, but amongst the black population, it is huge. It is huge. So what is it that is leading to these numbers that we are currently seeing? And mind you again, that we have a government that is black. We have a pro-poor black government. But these are the stats that we are dealing with, looking at the past 10 years. These are the stats. And also, if you look at the provinces, the Western Cape has the lowest unemployment rate at 20.3%. The Northern Cape, followed by the Northern Cape at 26.9%. The Eastern Cape has the worst unemployment rate at 41.9%, but this is a recurrence as well. So I'd love to hear from you what you make of these stats on 0614-104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Also on the show this afternoon, we look at South Africa's arguments at the ICJ to find Israel's occupation illegal. We'll be speaking to Dr. Kingsley Makubela, who is the Director of Risk Recon. And then at 20 to 4, we speak to Professor Andre Roux, economist at Stellenbosch Business School. Will the 2024 budget speech present a viable pathway to long-term sustained and inclusive growth? And there's a PwC report where they say they expect that there could be an increase either in VAT or an increase in income tax. So that conversation is coming up at 20 to 4. So those are some of the stories that we have for you on the agenda this afternoon. Anything else that you'd like to place on the agenda on 0614-1007. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
And we start off here 13 minutes after 3 o'clock. Professor Musa Qulu is now joining us on the line, cultural expert and also the founder of Indonza, ESC's think tank. The recent appointment of Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi as the new Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation has split public opinion in KwaZulu-Natal and is likely to plunge the Zulu royal family into deeper turmoil. At the center of the controversy is how Buthelezi was appointed by the Zulu King, Misizulu Kazwelithini, and some are arguing that he is not the right person for the role, as he is neither an Inkosi nor a member of the Zulu royal family. To give us a sense of what informs these tensions, Professor Musa Qulu now joining us on the line. Professor Qulu, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. Has it always been a condition that the Prime Minister must be a member of the royal family or must be Inkosi before they are even shortlisted for that position?
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and your listeners. History shows that in the past, except for once, all prime ministers were Inkosi. It happened once when King Dinuzulu was king, but then he was, for most of the time, he was in prison. So he couldn't appoint a prime minister. His mother became some kind of stand-in prime minister, and at some stage she was assisted by a commoner, but not a complete commoner because he was coming from the Zwide Numalo kingdom himself. But it has always been somebody with that kind of credentials. Why? Because in terms of the structures and systems of the kingdom, the Amakhosi are central to it, followed by the royal household, as well as Amabuto. Once you don't have representations from those structures in terms of tradition, then it becomes a problem. And I think when I talk to Contralesa, they seem also to think that other Amakhosi, other kingdoms, from time to time do face similar problems. And then on the issue of Ndunankulu being coming from the royal household, it historically maybe would have happened in the far past, but there's always a fair representation in the royal council, which must consist of traditional leaders, Amakhosi, as well as senior members of the Zulu royal family. At the moment, there's not such a council, and so the vacancy, the vacuum makes it sometimes. That's why when you find that every time the king makes an appointment, there's an outcry of some sort because there's no consultation.
Yeah. What was there a process that was going to be followed, that was going to be more transparent, I guess, and also that may have led to the appointment of somebody different?
Well, let me start by saying, from our perspective as analysts, there was expectations generally that the son of the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi would be the one that's appropriate, because he's generally accepted. KZN is also a place of many tensions, political tensions. So he's accepted politically. The prime minister is usually somebody that would be an advisor to the king. And there are always elements of either relationship as coming from the royal family or some kind of friendship between the two. So in this case, it's not clear why Prince Inkosi Zuzefa Buthelezi was not appointed, because some people say up until the Friday before, it was known that he was going to be appointed. And then, of course, something else happened. So there's all sorts of, conspiracy theories moving around as to what might have happened. There is no process, except that if he's taken from among Amakhosi, then they'll accept such a person because he understands the systems, the protocols of traditional leadership and so on. If he is not, and he does not, it may become problematic in terms of how do they relate to him and how does everybody else relate to him. And what complicates matters with Mr. Thulasizwe Buthelezi is that he is a high-profile member of the IFP. And 2 months before the king appointed him, he was on TV seeming to be endorsing the IFP for the coming elections and wishing them well to win.
Yeah, but he's a member of the IFP, isn't he?
Who?
This is Thulasizwe.
I say he is a very, very, very high-ranking member of the IFP.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm saying that as a result of those two incidences where the king was heard endorsing the IFP and then go on to appoint somebody with such a high profile is seen, I think, also in political circles, especially the ANC, as the king endorsing somebody from the IFP, maybe with a view to giving advantage to the IFP in the oncoming elections.
Yeah.
Some of the interpretations are like that.
Yeah. And outside the royal family, how does that then augur? That you have a senior member of the IFP who is the Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation, but also knowing that, of course, even the former Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation was actually the founder of the IFP.
Well, Buthelezi was generally accepted because at the time he had been actually appointed in 1954, long before, some 20 years before the IFP was founded. So the IFP found him already a traditional prime minister.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different case now, but I must say, Aldrin, that there was generally no expectation that because of the unease, especially in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, around the high political profile of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, there was a general expectation that the next person to be appointed will not have these very high political, attachments around him. But then, of course, this is one of the things that you will find that it has divided the IFP people, or may I say sections of them, because they also don't think the same, are happy. But those that were loyal to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi don't seem to be very happy because they feel that maybe the household of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has been let down by this overlook. The ANC, of course, you can expect that they're quite unhappy, extremely so unhappy, because on the ground, as I said, maybe they think that the king is giving advantage to the IFP.
Just a quick one, Prof. As Indonza Yesizwe, have you guys looked into Ingonyama Trust, the board of Ingonyama Trust, and now that the king has said that he will be the chairperson of Ingonyama Trust, but during an interview with the Newsroom Africa's Ziyanda Ngobo yesterday, the Prime Minister said while the king would be the chairperson of the trust, he would not be accounting to Parliament. Is this something that you have explored as Indonza Yesizwe?
No, we have explored. There is no way in which he cannot account to Parliament, because you must know these things are legislated in terms of how they work. And I suspect this is what is going to happen, but maybe I shouldn't say it now. One day, the Reverend Thulasizwe will arrive to chair Ingonyama Trust on those bases, saying that he's sent by the king. But there is no way he can be chairperson there and not account to the minister and to Parliament, because it's a public entity which is regulated by law, and the behavior of all chairpersons of boards in government entities is expected to be the same. So it will happen like that. But maybe there's all sorts of interpretations that are not legislated. But when it comes to actually what happens, how it will happen, it will actually happen as regulated. We have looked into that, and we came to a conclusion in some of our discussions that it could be problematic for the king to fully, take control of that role.
Thank you so much for your time, Professor Musa Kulu, who's a cultural expert and founder of Indonza Yesizwe think tank.
Sure, girl, this Ford Puma, love the interior.
And how about its award-winning engine and selectable drive modes? From only $7,899 per month with 0% deposit, Primeless 5.5% and a driver assistance pack included.
Sure, get more with the new Ford Puma Titanium from only $7,899 per month.
Visit your nearest Ford dealer today. T&Cs apply.
Load shedding is a controlled way to balance the supply and demand of electricity on the power grid and to prevent a blackout. Eskom and government are working hard to solve the energy crisis and improve power generation capacity. If we all use only what we need, we could help reduce demand on the network and ultimately end load shedding together. Government and Eskom, working hard to reduce and ultimately end load shedding.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation would like to alert the public of an email correspondence purporting to be that of the SABC, threatening the public that they will be issued with a warrant of arrest for non-payment of TV license fees. The public is advised to ignore the contents of a correspondence coming from an email address jjm@mega.bw. This is not an SABC email address, and the corporation will not at any point threaten anyone with a warrant of arrest. The SABC also advises the public not to download any statement from this fake email as instructed. The SABC TV Licenses Department can be reached on 011 3309 555 or can be accessed through an email to tvlic.info@sabc.co.za for friendly and kind customer service. Alternatively, the public may use our secure website, which is www.tvlic.co.za, to download statements.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
23 minutes after 3 o'clock, a draft Security Council resolution demanding an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza could be put to a vote on Tuesday and draw the U.S. veto in the process. Such is the dilemma facing the text led by author Algeria that signaled its intentions to soon after the International Court of Justice ordered provisional measures on Israel at the end of January. But Washington's envoy has been steadfast in her view that any action in the Council would undermine efforts to secure a new hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. Sean Bryce Peace has that story.
In a weekend statement that essentially clarified that the Algerian draft text enjoyed no prospect of success, Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield said the United States had been working tirelessly on securing a new hostage deal that would bring a period of calm to Gaza for at least 6 weeks, and from which they could then take time and the steps to build a more enduring peace. In that regard, she indicated that the draft resolution would not achieve those outcomes and that the United States did not support action on it, stating clearly that were it to come up for a vote as drafted, it would not be adopted.
What we're saying about the resolution is it's not timely.
This was the U.S. envoy back on February 2nd.
We have 2 resolutions right now that we're working to implement that deals with the humanitarian situation. It calls for a cessation of hostilities. They have given the last resolution gave the Special Coordinator COG a mandate to move forward on addressing some of these issues. So we don't see that this resolution adds anything to what we already have, but we worry that the resolution will hurt what we're doing on the ground right now.
The expected vote on Tuesday comes amid growing concern about a planned Israeli military assault on Rafah, where over 1.2 million Palestinians are sheltering, with nowhere to go. As the Arab group continues to push for the council to act, its chair, Tunisian Ambassador Tarek Ladeb.
We reaffirmed the 3 main demands of the Arab group, which are an immediate ceasefire, an unhindered humanitarian assistance, and a prevention of any plan of transfer of the Palestinians from their land. And now we are about the new looming threat that was ordered by the Prime Minister of Israel to undertake a military operation in Rafah, where about 1.5 million Palestinians facing a very disastrous humanitarian situation. So we insisted and we reiterated our position to prevent this catastrophic scenario and to see the international community and the Security Council shoulder their responsibility to prevent this deterioration of the situation.
In her statement, Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield said the U.S. would continue to engage in the diplomacy necessary to get the hostage deal over the finish line and be candid with Israel and regional leaders regarding Washington's expectations for the protection of the more than 1 million civilians in Rafah. She urged other parties to give the process the best odds of succeeding rather than push measures that put such an agreement in jeopardy, as the U.S. continues to render the Council a secondary venue in the search for peace in Gaza, as pressure continues to build on the critical need for progress in a 4-month conflict that has claimed almost 30,000 Palestinian lives to date. I'm Sherman Bryce-Pease in New York.
Well, joining us now is Dr. Kingsley Makubela, Director at Risk Recon, as we look at the application that has been brought before the International Court of Justice for a non-binding opinion on the occupation by Israel in Palestinian territories. And of course, this is a matter that has been brought before the court by the United Nations itself. Dr. Kingsley Makubela now joining us on the line. Dr. Makubela, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. Unprecedented that you have 52 countries that are also arguing in this particular case. But what do you make of the messaging that South Africa was pushing today?
Good afternoon, Aldrin. In 2022, the General Assembly took a resolution to refer the matter of the occupation to actually seek a legal opinion in terms of the occupation of the Palestinian territory, the policies of Israel, and the status of Jerusalem. So that resolution has culminated in what we are seeing today. So 52 countries have made themselves available to go and motivate whatever they discussed during the Security Council, during the General Assembly debate on the matter. That Aldrin, it's actually unprecedented that the General Assembly moved directly to the ICJ because of the paralysis in the Security Council. I think it's a new avenue that they have opened up really to try to challenge what's going on in that part of the world.
Also, then, of what consequence would such an opinion be if it is non-binding?
Aldrin, it's a highly moral standpoint that people are seeking, and people are pushing these international institutions to their maximum capacity to be able to make pronouncements and to start actually demonizing those who are seen not to be compliant with international law. So Israel has had a case 2 months ago that was brought by South Africa with respect to genocide. Now it's questioning the legality of Israel's continued occupation and expansion into the Palestinian territory. It will be very difficult for Israel really to ignore this. And this one, Aldrin, given the fact that you're having 52 countries that are making presentation there. I mean, if you listen to South African ambassador's presentation at the court, he is starting to characterize Israel as an apartheid state. So that's a narrative that is starting to emerge. Now, apartheid has been declared as a crime against humanity. It creates a huge problem for Israel. And it pushes them to the brink, actually, of trying to make certain concessions. It actually even puts countries like the United States in a corner. Aldrin, you recall during this debate, Israel has opted not to participate, to go and defend itself, but they've sent an observer to go and observe what's going on. Prime Minister Netanyahu has already made a pronouncement that this sitting of the court is intended to deprive Israel of the right to defend itself, a regular narrative that we've had. So they are not going to regard, they are not even going to respect anything that comes out of this, and they made it quite clear.
Yeah, that's evident as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Kingsley Makubela, Director of the Risk Recon. It is a minute after 3:30, time for the news headlines.
Thank you very much, Aldrin. And with the news headlines, good afternoon. The SABC says it is committed to ensuring that the impasse it has with the signal distributor Sentech is resolved. COSATU says it expected further job losses to be recorded in the fourth quarter of last year on the back of disappointing third quarter data. And South Africa's senior state law advisor Andre Stemmet has told the International Court of Justice in The Hague that the right of self-determination is inalienable and is recognized by the UN. Details of these and other stories, 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And let's see what's happening on the roads with Rob Byrne. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Aldrin. A very good afternoon to you. Good afternoon, everybody. There's quite a heavy backlog of traffic through Midrand. Again, today it's a crash going southbound before Allendale Road. So traffic is backed all the way through to Olifantsfontein and maybe a bit past that. So if you're driving to Joburg, real big snarl up Olifantsfontein through New Road and halfway down towards Allendale. And then everybody going north busy having a look at that and getting caught up. So Buccleuch interchange through to New Road is quite heavy. Also smash on the Mike 1 before Grayston Drive heading north. That's a heavy queue coming up from Houghton through Killarney, through Melrose on your way towards the Sandton area. That's quite heavy if you're coming out of central Joburg side, wanting to make your way north towards Sandton. Leaving Pietermaritzburg, a breakdown by Market Road on the N3. The bottom of the Pietermaritzburg bypass is moving slowly to go negotiate that one. And Cape Town's been a crash on the N2 outbound at Mowbray Main Road. All the lanes are open, but it's causing a big delay. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard, heavy coming from the CBD. Philip Kosana coming from the CBD, jammed up trying to get into that N2 outbound, and even the M3 inbound from Newlands. Big backlogs there passing UCT up to Hospital Bend. The problem with the N3 inbound is trying to get into that N2 outbound queue. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
Good afternoon, Tumi.
Hi, Aldrin.
Côte d'Ivoire.
Yo.
the gift that keeps on giving.
Sure. Good news after good news after good news. They went and won the Africa Cup of Nations, and now it's confirmed that Emira's Fire is now their full-time coach. It's confirmed. He's not an interim coach anymore. And it's a remarkable story because a lot of people didn't think that Ivory Coast would go on to win the Africa Cup
Especially considering what was happening in the tournament.
Exactly. They lost 2 of their 3 group stage matches. They fired their coach. Fire comes in, and then he takes them all the way. Just by the way, he used to play for the national team and he didn't win it as a player. So this time around, he wins as a coach. And funny enough,
interim coach.
Right? And funny enough, he does not really have a lot of experience when it comes to coaching because his only previous coaching experience was with the juniors at French side Nice and as a coach of the reserves at Clermont Foot. So quite interesting.
Very interesting. And here's the thing about it. Some people may just argue, but sure, there's been a foundation that has been laid already. So he came in with the foundation already laid. But looking at the performance during the group stages, and for me, the mental endurance that is required from losing all of those games, from having your coach fired, the head coach fired, still continuing in the tournament and going all the way up to win the thing. That's remarkable.
Very remarkable. And at one stage, I think the topic was perhaps the players were not playing for Jean-Louis Gasquet, or they didn't get along with him because there was one game where I think he had to kind of give them like a pep talk. The players went to the side alone. And then everyone was just like, what's going on over here? But then afterwards, when Fire came in, it was as if they were playing for him. So, you know what? Kudos to Ivory Coast, but that is the top story, that Fire now is the full-time head coach after he led them to winning the Africa Cup of Nations. Then still staying with football, even after pointing out SuperSport United were short of numbers during the first half of the season, head coach Gavin Hunt only managed one signing during the recent January transfer window. The Tshwane outfit brought in defender Keegan Allen after he became a free agent, having mutually terminated his contract with Morocco Swallows. And now with the latter part of the campaign now in full swing after the AFCON break, the same issues still confront Hunt. And tonight, SuperSport take on Cape Town City in the Nedbank Cup round of 32. And Hunt adds that he's likely to go with a makeshift back four.
Okay, I'll give you an example. So we play tomorrow night, we got one centre back. I play Sunday, Egypt, I got one centre back. And I play the team that's lying second, I'm going to go one centre back next Tuesday. What would you do? Yeah, look, you got to, I mean, listen. I mean, we spoke about the Dondal game last year. Prioritizing, I got to prioritize. And as much as I want to do well in Africa, we don't have it. What am I going to do? You know what I'm saying? I mean, the club, we got to the final, the Confed Cup 5 years ago. SuperSport played TP Mazembe. They should have got relegated.
Meanwhile, Paris Saint-Germain striker Kylian Mbappe has reportedly agreed to join Real Madrid next season. Mbappe wanted his future sorted before March. So on the 13th of February, before training, he met up with PSG president Nasser Al-Khelaifi and told him that he was leaving and joining Real. The 35-year-old is set to sign a 5-year deal with Real, earning him 15 million euros a season, which is just over 307 million in rands, plus a 150 million euro signing on bonus to be paid over 5 years, and he will also keep a percentage of his image rights. And if Croatia midfielder Luka Modric leaves this summer, then Mbappe would inherit the number 10 shirt that he wears for France. In the meantime, Roscoe Speckman is keen to make his impact felt when he returns for the Blitzboks in the first Canada Sevens tournament since 2017. The first time Speckman played at the Canada Sevens in Vancouver, his teammates included the likes of Brian Habana and Ryan Kanowski, and the Springbok Sevens lost to New Zealand in the final. The following year, the Blitzboks lost to England in the final, and this time around, 7 years later, the 34-year-old wants to make it count. And the Blitzboks have won the Canada Sevens 3 times and were runners-up twice since the first tournament in March 2016. In the meantime, the Crusaders have announced that All Blacks try machine Will Jordan will be out of action for 6 months because of shoulder injury. A big blow, obviously, for the defending Super Rugby champions, especially on the eve of the new season. The 25-year-old, who was the top try scorer at last year's World Cup, needs an operation on a pre-existing injury and will miss the entire Super Rugby campaign, which kicks off this week. And the Crusaders, under the new head coach, Rob Penny, start the bid for an 8th straight title away to the Chiefs in Hamilton on Friday. Anything's off with tennis news. Taylor Fritz defeated close friend Tommy Paul 6-2 and 6-3 to successfully defend his ATP 250 Delray Beach Open title. The final between the two Americans was pushed back a day as rain ensured no play could take place at the Delray Beach in Florida. Fritz beat his compatriot in 1 hour and 40 minutes, becoming just the second player in the tournament's history to retain their title. And the first one was Jason Stoltberg in 1996 and 97. On that note, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
It is 20 minutes now before 4 o'clock. Coming up on the show in this hour, we'll be in conversation with Risenga Maluleke, who is the Statistician General of the country. He'll be joining us at around 10 to 4 to speak about the unemployment stats. We have now increased to 32.1%. And then we're also in conversation with Professor Andre Roux, economist at Stellenbosch's Business School, as we build up to the budget speech that will be delivered tomorrow by the Minister of Finance, Enoch Gotongwane. In the meantime, let's take your voice notes on 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Aldrin, if Western Cape has the least number of unemployment, what does that say to ANC in regard to other provinces that are under ANC? So that leaves much to be desired. Thanks. We live here in Kuma.
This morning, and just the mere mentioning of Zamazamas being involved again just makes me sick to the stomach that these Zamazamas think that they can rule our country. Just glad that no one got shot, because I can imagine that at least a couple of motorists had firearms with them. So yeah, no. These things need to be smoked out. And these Zamazamas need to pay for their evil deeds. Have a good show, bye.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
It is now 19 minutes before 4 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Professor Andre Roux, who's an economist at Stellenbosch's Business School. Will the 2024 budget speech present a viable pathway to long-term sustained inclusive growth? In his budget speech, Finance Minister Enoch Gotongwane is expected to indicate whether the austerity measures would remain in place or be lifted. Professor Andre Roux is of the view that tomorrow's budget speech runs the risk of validating the old adage that you can't be all things to all people. And he now joins us to elaborate further. Prof, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. But the minister comes from a party that calls itself a broad church, but can you be a broad church when it comes to the economy?
You see, that is where the dilemma lies. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, at the best of times, budget speeches are complicated affairs, trying to balance economic reality with politics. This time round, even more so, because as we all know, we're on the eve of a general election where the ruling party, for the first time ever, might not gain a full majority, an outright majority. So trying to install, as you said earlier, fiscal discipline, which is actually needed, goes contradictory to the need to make sure that enough votes are cast in the upcoming election. So it's a very difficult trade-off to make, and I'm glad I'm not the minister.
And when we look at, for instance, the president's reply to the State of the Nation debate, he emphasized the importance of infrastructure and spending on infrastructure, and how infrastructure actually reignites economic activity. However, though, the industry is saying that actually government has been cutting spending on infrastructure.
And that's a sad thing. In fact, if we take a look at, for instance, the very high levels of government debt, which is one of the big concerns, which the rate has gone up, or the ratio, from 27% in 2007 to, well, mid-70s. Now, that in of its own right is not a huge problem if all that additional debt had been used to help finance infrastructure. Sadly, that is not the case. A lot of it has been used to finance civil servant salaries, to finance social grants, and increasingly to finance interest on previously incurred debt. And these are what we call this is current expenditure and not infrastructure spending. So a high debt level is more than acceptable if it's used for the right reasons. And you're quite right. We often say that infrastructure is the engine of future growth, long-term future growth. But we have an overemphasis on current spending. The civil servant wage bill alone is 15% of the GDP. Our interest burden as a government is around about 20% of total spending. 1.2 billion rands worth of interest is being paid every day by government, which actually means taxpayer. So it's the wrong mix, if you like, of spending that's also problematic.
And then, of course, the expectation, you've just touched on this, the expanding budget deficit, we expect it to be at around 6%. But then on the other end as well, during the State of the Nation address this time around, the President speaking about the NHI and saying that he's just looking for his pen and the NHI will then become law. Do you think that this is the right time to pursue the NHI, considering the initial seed capital that is required for this act?
Look, there's never a better or worse time. The NHI has been in our lexicon for, I think, more than a decade, and I think our certain parties getting rather impatient, and we all know there's a desperate need for that, just as there's a desperate need for poverty relief and social grants, etc. But, you've got to be real. There is a limited slice of cake at our disposal. Part of the problem is that economic growth is so low, which means the tax base is not growing very rapidly. So if you want to finance all these additional things, and you don't want to borrow too much money, then you need to take a look at taxes as an additional form of revenue. Actually changing tax rates, increasing tax rates. And that, too, is a very unfortunate reality, because consumers and taxpayers, as it is, are battered and bruised, have been battered and bruised for a couple of years, with more possible pain to come, with the petrol price going up again next month quite significantly. Interest rates remain high. We all know the story. So there is no ideal compromise here. There's a compromise, but there's no ideal solution. Somehow, somebody has to pay the price. As somebody once said, you must remember what the government gives, it must first take away.
Mm-hmm. So that someone, is that you and I? I see the PwC has a report where they say they expect a 0.5% increase in value-added tax that could be announced by the minister, but there's also a possibility of increasing income tax. And I wonder what the rationale behind that would be, considering that about 2 years ago, government decided to decrease the corporate income tax to try and boost economic activity.
Yeah. Again, one's got to look for not the lesser, but the least of all evils. So personal income tax is always a candidate, but not in the current circumstances where consumers, as I say, are already struggling. Then you look at corporate income tax, also a candidate, but at the same time, corporate tax is paid on company profits, which aren't all that great these days. And besides, we desperately need foreign investment. And foreign investors are going to think twice before investing in a country where they pay high rates of tax. That leaves you with the next biggest one is VAT. And there are good arguments to have a higher VAT rate. VAT does or is paid by a much broader proportion of the population. The counter-argument, and especially strong one now, going to an election, is that poorer members of society are then unfairly burdened compared to richer members. So again, as I said, it's finding some kind of least of all evils. By the way, I'm pretty sure that, as it always does, that the so-called sin taxes will go up, alcohol and drink, etc. But we might see an increase in income tax, a special increase, a kind of a wealth tax for the so-called super rich. That might be on the cards.
Yeah. Final one, Prof. The unemployment figures just came out, increased to 32.1%. And I was just telling our listeners, again, referring to the budget, to the President's State of the Nation address, when he was delivering his address, it was at 31.9%, which he characterized also as the worst ever. And now it has become even worse. But to the point that you also raise in the article, you cannot buy economic growth via populism. What must happen?
Yeah, I'm afraid the budget's not going to solve unemployment. the unemployment problem, and you're quite right. 32.1, 31.9, pick any numbers, it's horribly high. And it's been exceptionally high for 20 years, 25% plus. That is the real problem. It's chronically high. And it's caused by all kinds of long-term structural issues. And you can't undo structural issues in a couple of months, in a couple of years, and you can't undo it in a budget. So I'm afraid the pathway to reducing unemployment lies not just with government, but it's all about the appropriate kind of skills. It's about the changing structure of the economy that needs to be accommodated. It is about various forms of labor legislation. It's about making sure that we are geared up to the fourth industrial revolution. But all these things take time. As the wise old man once said, if you want 12 years of education, it takes about 12 years. It's about making sure that education is not only made available, but the right kind of education. And as I say, these kind of things will not be fixed in a budget. That's just not possible.
Thank you so much for your time. Professor Andre Roux, who's an economist at the Stellenbosch Business School. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. And our studio line is 086 000 2032.
Culinary tales bold and true. That connects with joy, meal and mood. Dijo le Bophelo. A show for sustenance of mind and heart, where food and choice and harmony flow. Catch Dijo le Bophelo and find your glow only on SABC2. Brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
The cost of living crisis is real. Here's what one Outsurance client did about it.
I'm Amy. I'm 26 from Kenilworth. When I got my 2022 Ford EcoSport, the immediate thought was to phone Outsurance, and I pay only 819 Rand per month. No insurers were able to beat or match the premium that I'm currently paying.
Want a car insurance premium that will blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote and to find out about included benefits like panic assistance that sends the nearest medical or armed response unit to you wherever you may be 24/7. Here's Yusuf.
45 years old from Tygeral, Western Cape. I pay 700 Rand for my Polo 1.6 2021 model. If you haven't called Outsurance yet, definitely get in touch.
Give it a go. SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Let's take your voice notes on 0614-104-107. And just a reminder once again to please keep your voice notes below 60 minutes. So below 60 minutes, please, please, please. Anything above that, unfortunately, we won't be able to play.
Here in Kingston, Eastern Cape, Adrian, I listened to that briefing about the statistics of unemployment. Adrian, as a person that lives in the ground and see what is happening around Eastern Cape, I don't believe all those stats. Maybe they are the stats maybe are not conclusive. Maybe they're just giving the stats that are recorded. They're not giving the extended amount of how the stats of unemployment is in Eastern Cape, because it's dire than that 40-something% that you were talking about. It's really, really dire. If you can come here now during the day, you see what's happening here. People are just walking like it's in Monday. People are walking like it's Saturday, and they have nothing to do.
So we'll raise that with the statistician general in the next short while. Apologies. Apparently I said 60 minutes. The voice note must be 60 minutes. No, the voice note must be less than a minute. So meaning 60 seconds and below. 60 seconds and below.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and the SFM listeners. Here is another blame game again from the responsible people who are leading us. They are coming with a blame game of this M1 issue to say it was Zamazamas. It's not Zamazamas. If you look at the picture, it shows you that these are professional criminals. We are going to a situation again there when Zamazamas were accused of raping those girls. Only last minute to find that not even a single Zamazama was there. Thanks, James in Johannesburg.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
Someone just said that if the voice notes are below 60 minutes, then Beyond the Headlines should be aired for 12 hours. 60 seconds. So keep your voice notes to 60 seconds and below. 0614-104-107. And you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. We're in conversation next with the Statistician General of the country, Risenga Maluleke. Statistics South Africa has released the unemployment rate for the fourth quarter of 2023, which rose to 32.1% from 31.9% in the third quarter. The industries that contributed to the net employment decline include community and social service, construction, agriculture, trade, and manufacturing. Also, according to last year's fourth quarter results, the youth remain vulnerable in the labor market. And the Statistician General is now joining us on the line. SG, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and let me greet the listeners as always.
I really appreciate your time as well, SG. SG, ordinarily with the fourth quarter, what would happen is that we'll see a slight increase in employment because of the seasonal jobs that become available during that particular period. And the stats are painting a different picture.
Well, if you look at employment alone, Aldrin, we will then think, well, what has happened? But a good example is what we see in trade. So usually trade in the last 3 quarters of the year creates employment, but trade has lost about 28,000 jobs. And one of the things is that we have seen in the way in which the consumer price index has been behaving for quite some time, in that consumer price index has been moving a bit higher. It came a bit down a bit lower after our COVID, but it started again climbing higher. And consumers have been withholding expenditure and from the side of households. And when they withhold expenditure, the businesses, trade cannot hire as much people because there's no demand. So that is one of the issues that we have seen. Construction has been depressed for quite some time, but agriculture as well. In the month of December, you and I know that we used to have rains coming from October, November, December. But because of global warming patterns, we're seeing changes. And the changes that we're seeing is that rains have just started this February. They will go all the way into around April, May.
And then also when we look at employment in the formal sector, I think 124,000 jobs that have been lost there. And then we compare that to the informal sector, and over 120 jobs have been created.
Certainly. One of the things that you would expect, especially in the formal sector, is that by about that time in December, we have about a third, firstly, of our jobs in the elementary sector, which includes informality. And one of the things that you see is that the formal sector doesn't create as much jobs. It does, but not as much as you would see in other times of the year, especially that things are slowing down. And when you look at that third of the elementary behavior of our labor markets, is that you're looking at people who are in domestic, because third is in domestic workership and elementary. You're having people that are just standing on the street corners, waiting for someone who will ask them to come and assist with something.
Also noting again with the unemployment as per education level, again it brings back home the fact that if you are educated, chances are very high that you would find employment. If you're not, chances are low of you finding employment. But then amongst the graduates, a slight increase there in the unemployment rate by 1.1%.
Graduates have always been moving sideways, Aldrin. And when we say sideways, we're saying they have moved up and down. There are times when graduate unemployment sits at about 10.2, 10.6, depending on the quarter in question. But one thing that one can say specifically is that, including in other measures, look at the measure for poverty, drivers of poverty. It's levels of education. If your levels are lower, it means you will not be able to take up employment readily and easily. But if you have higher levels of employment, you have much more chances. So graduates actually have over a period of time enjoyed the lowest unemployment rate of all levels, even compared to other tertiary, where people have a diploma of 6 months or a 1-year diploma or something. One of the things that we have observed is that those with matric also used to be lower than the national unemployment rate. But they've gone, for the last more than a year, they've actually gone higher than the national unemployment rate. So it means that higher levels of education do assist people to get employment.
And just a quick final one, SG, the unemployment amongst the different demographics of the country, specifically focusing on race over the past 10-year period, unemployment amongst black people has increased by nearly 10%, to 27.1% in 2013, 36.1% in 2023. Just quickly, your reflections on that.
Well, black Africans have always been vulnerable to labor markets. Their unemployment has always been higher than the national average, even more for black African women. If you look at that increase that we are talking about of about 9 percentage points from 2013 to now, still works higher than the national average, whereas the other population groups, coloreds have been hovering closer to national average. But the Indian Asians, and particularly the whites, have always been having the lowest, unemployment rate. As of now, it's sitting at 8.5%, whereas the national one is sitting at 32.1%.
SG, thank you so much for your time. That is Resenga Maluleke, who is the Statistician General of the country. It's a minute after 4 o'clock, time for the news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top stories this hour, the SABC speaks on its impasse with Centec and reaction to the latest unemployment figures. A very good afternoon. The SABC says it is committed to ensuring that the impasse it has with the signal distributor Centec is resolved. CEO Nomsa Bedi was speaking during a briefing in Parliament by the Communications Department and various entities, including Centec. The SABC's scheduled meeting to present its new corporate plan to the Portfolio Committee was postponed after the corporation sent a letter of apology. The public broadcaster has approached the Competitions Tribunal over the high tariffs by Centec. It is currently paying Centec 20 million rand a month, and it still owes the entity. COSATU says it expects further job losses to be recorded on the back of disappointing fourth quarter data. The Federation says the 2.2% increase in unemployment in the third quarter could have been much worse, and it anticipates unemployment to increase in the next quarter as some mining houses are retrenching workers. COSATU's Matthew Parks was responding to the quarterly labour survey by Stats SA, which showed that unemployment increased to 32.1%.
But to be honest with you, we actually feel it'll be much worse, given the levels of the chaos, the crisis we're experiencing in Transnet. And we feel it's going to get worse in the next quarter because the mining industry is giving out retrenchment notices, because mining industry just simply can't export its mineral exports if you can't get them onto the trains, if you can't get them through the ports at Transnet. So that's quite worrying. We are actually fearful about what might happen to the manufacturing sector too if you don't begin to turn things around at Transit.
Police in BG in the Eastern Cape have arrested 2 suspects who allegedly gang raped a woman at the Mbashe locality. It's alleged that on Friday afternoon, the woman was approached by 3 men while on her way to the Ngwati locality. She was gang raped and then taken to the home of one of the suspects, where she was tied up and raped again by the suspect. When the suspect left the house in the morning, she managed to free herself and reported the matter to police. Police spokesperson Welile Majolo.
2 suspects aged 25 and 30 years old have since been arrested, while the search for the third one continues. Suspects will appear at Biki Regional Court soon on charges of rape. OR Tambo District Commissioner Major General Phumzile Cetjana welcomed the speedy arrest and iterated that police will leave no stone unturned in ensuring that perpetrators of gender-based violence receive punishment that they deserve.
The farm owner and farm manager accused of being involved in the disappearance of 2 men in Evander, Mpumalanga have been denied bail. 52-year-old farm owner Hermanus Della Rey and a 40-year-old farm manager William Underhay are accused of being involved in the disappearance of Stembiso Mnigati and Buhlebe Kaya Glimba. The men were allegedly last seen hunting on a farm in May last year. The case has been postponed to the 20th of March for further investigations. And South Africa's senior state law advisor Andre Stemmet has told the International Court of Justice in The Hague that the right of self-determination is inalienable and is recognized by the UN. He says the people of Palestine must have permanent sovereignty. The World Court is holding public hearings on Israel's occupation of a Palestinian territory. Stemmet says Israel's policies and practices have reached the threshold of apartheid practices. He says the court decades ago found South Africa's occupation of Namibia to be illegal.
Israel has occupied the Palestinian territory in the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem since the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, annexed East Jerusalem and parts of the West Bank in that same year. It is not disputed that the acquisition of territory by the threat or use of force is illegal, irrespective of whether the territory was acquired through a war of self-defense or of an act of aggression.
The top story at 4 o'clock, the SABC says it is committed to ensuring that the impasse it has with the signal distributor Santec is resolved. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemeli.
Coming up in your sports this hour, 2025 Africa Cup of Nations to be played in July and August. Sharks forward completes premiership move, and Alcaraz says that he needs to improve many things after Buenos Aires loss. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good afternoon. Major alert. If you use the N1 highway, it's probably a good idea to avoid it today through Midrand. There's a small truck that has overturned between New Road and Allendale on the southbound side. 4 lanes are closed, 1 lane on the left to get through. Traffic coming through from Pretoria backed up almost to the old Johannesburg Road. That's how bad it is today. Big queues going south into Joburg towards the scene. And if you're heading northbound, a lot of interest. So the onlooking factor queuing traffic from Woodmead on the Mike one, getting up through Buccleuch and up towards the New Road exit. A lot of pressure on the old Johannesburg Road, the alternative running parallel. Olifantsfontein, New Road bridges, all absolutely jam-packed, trying to deal with that as well. Crash on Joburg's Mike 1 South before Crown Interchange, coming down from Parktown. That's quite heavy today. Truck fire incident between Volksrust and Newcastle, Majuba Pass area, so the N11. Truckers and motorists stuck in quite heavy queues out both sides of that N11, both directions. Coming out of Cape Town, busy on the run to Hospital Bend. It's a crash on the side of the N2 outbound by Mowbray Main Road, and also on Della Boulevard, Philip Kusana outbound queuing, the M3 inbound queuing to that queue coming in from the UCT campus. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
Good afternoon. This is your captain speaking with just a little flight information. We're flying at an altitude of 37,000 feet and our airspeed is 400 miles an hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to BTH Airline. I'm your co-pilot, Aldrin Sampear, and I'm with you from 3 to 6, flying you through the turbulent airwaves. But the landing will be smooth.
So just sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the flight.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
10 past 4.
10 past 4. Bob, Bob.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
10 past 4 in Luyawa, 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. So, yesterday, remember, we got a call from one of our listeners, Brajo from Gqeberha, and this is on carrying a firearm, and also who is allowed to have access to that firearm, and looking at the divergence of voices on what is right and what is not right. We decided to bring on board the experts and people who are in the space. So we managed to get a hold of Brigadier P.N. Sikakane, Section Head of a Central Firearms Register at the South African Police Service. And then also we'll be speaking to Montanik Buli, who's an Executive Director for Girls on Fire, who will be joining us just after that conversation with the Brigadier Sikakane, just to bring or shed some light on what is allowed and what is not allowed, because that call for me was a bit disturbing. Anyway, so we will be playing a snippet of the conversation that we had yesterday with Brajo, and then we're in conversation with the Brigadier Sikakane. In the meantime, let's just quickly take some of your voice notes on 0614-104-107, and you can drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
#SAFMBTH.
Good day, Aldrin. Aldrin, you're speaking to Mansin. You know what the problem? The problem is on this high unemployment rate. It's because of these small businesses like the restaurants. All these shopping centers here in Cape Town, like in Waterfront and all those big ones, Waterfront, Century City, all of them, they employ foreign nationals. And all those foreign nationals, they are not in the population register. Majority of them, if it's not 98% of them. If they can sort out this thing of employing foreign nationals, the unemployment rate will improve. Thank you.
Ambrogini on X expressing something quite similar, I think. He says, I wish we can break down the 36.1% unemployment stats amongst black Africans and look at the job lost at the bottom entry due to illegal labor force. The competition among unskilled job seekers at the bottom is what is contributing to this rise.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. You are speaking to Tabo here in Enade. Can you please assist me, Aldrin? My son is sitting at home He's got a placement letter from the district to go to attend grade 8. And the principal there at Ennerdale Secondary School is just deliberately denying my son to attend at that school. Even the district, is not helping at all. And my son is just sitting at home. I've got a placement letter here. Please assist me, Aldrin. Yeah, my name is Thabo Mapola, here in Ennerdale. Please assist me. My son is now psychologically is not okay because his peers are attending school. Thanks, Aldrin.
Okay, so we did receive the message and we have forwarded to the Department of Education in Gauteng. We're just waiting for the response and to see how they will be able to assist you. We will be in contact as well to give you an update on what they're saying.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Yeah, just listening to you read out those stats on unemployment. What you need to do is look at those unemployment figures that are growing in conjunction with the population growth, and you'll find that the other races are not growing. In actual fact, some of them are actually going backwards. So when there's no more jobs, no new jobs, the job losses are actually greater. Of course, if your population is growing, which the black population is, they're not going to be employed because there aren't any jobs. So all the other races are stable because the population growth is stable.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
0614-104-107, and you can drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM. Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.5 FM in Tabazimbi. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. Hashtag SAFMBTH.
It's 16 minutes after 4 o'clock. In conversation next with Brigadier Sikhakhane, who's a section head for the Central Firearms Register at the South African Police Service. Yesterday, we returned to the story of a grade 6 learner that shot at the principal and allegedly shot at the principal, and got an update from the Gauteng Department of Education. What emerged from the conversation is the question surrounding how a licensed gun was accessed and what are the regulations regarding who can access a licensed firearm besides the license holder. Let's just quickly listen to the call that we got from Brajo from Gqeberha, and then after that we'll speak to Brigadier Sikhakhane as well as Montanik Buli, who's the Executive Director of Girls on Fire. Okay, let's go to Brajo, who's joining us from Gqeberha. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Adrian and the SFM listeners. I've been following this story of this young boy who's alleged to have shot a principal.
Yeah.
And how the comments from, I think, the MEC for Education in the morning attempted to impute some liability for the actions of the young man onto the parents. And my opinion on the matter as a legal firearm owner is that, the control of management of firearms in South Africa is very serious. I mean, the government is doing a great job in terms of trying to make sure the right people have access to firearms. And in this case, a firearm is either in a safe or on your person.
Yeah.
Now, in your house, Adrian, if your firearm is not on you and is in a safe, who else do you believe in your house ought to know where this firearm is? My view, and I practice in my home, my spouse knows the firearm is, they know where the key is. My children, who are of a reasonable age, because a 13-year-old is a child, but you can still know that, hey, that's where the firearm, daddy's firearm is, that's where the key is. Because in the case of an emergency, you might need the child to say, child, go get the thing that's in the safe.
Okay. Brigadier Nhlanhla Skakane is now joining us on the line. Brigadier, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. So the conversation that we had yesterday is also around who is allowed to have access to a firearm outside of the firearm owner who's actually licensed in a household setup. Can you please assist us on that? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you and your listeners. In terms of the Firearm Control Act, Section 22, the holder of the firearm license can allow another person to use his firearm while under his or her immediate supervision, where it is safe to use the firearm for lawful reasons.
Okay.
And then in terms of the Act again, it says in Section 12 of the Act, it provides for additional license. A firearm license owner can have his family members that are residing in the same address as him or her to possess that firearm, but they have to apply for an additional firearm license.
Okay. So the individual in the house, the family member, would also need to get an additional firearm license to be legally allowed to handle that firearm?
Yes, it must get an additional firearm license. And if the firearm owner is leaving those premises, they must be staying in the same premises.
Yeah.
If that firearm owner is leaving the premises, the people that are owning the additional license, their additional licenses, they lapse. It means that they are no longer in use or they are no longer valid. They only valid when they are all in the same premises.
Oh, almost like with a learner's driver's license, where you'd be allowed to drive a car with a learner's driver's license, but there must be somebody in the car with a license. Is that something similar? Because yeah.
It's not the same, because when you are having an additional license, you can take the firearm and go and use it for the lawful purpose without the firearm owner, because you are carrying an additional license.
Okay.
But you must all reside in the same premises.
Okay, so you can if you have the additional firearm license, you can still take the firearm from the safe and then leave the house with the firearm, whether or not the primary owner of the firearm is there or not.
Yes, that is an additional license.
That's the additional license. Okay, no, that makes sense. And then on the part that you raised right at the beginning, where you say that any other person can have access to the firearm where it is safe to do so, what do you mean by that?
It's not any other person. He can have access to a firearm. He can use the firearm when the firearm owner is in direct supervision of that person. And also the use must be a lawful use.
Mm-hmm.
In a safe place.
What does a safe place mean?
A safe place can be when he is going to a shooting range, he's teaching them how to use the firearm, but he must be next to him or to her, so that if this person is failing to use the firearm, he must be able to help in time.
Okay, so in case of, like, for instance, what Prajo was outlining there, in case of an emergency in the house and there is a firearm in the house, the firearm is in the safe, the family members know that there's a firearm in the house, they know where the safe is, and they also have access to the key. I don't know if that's allowed, that they have access to the key that opens the safe where the firearm is stored. Can that individual who's not licensed to have a firearm go and take that firearm in case of an emergency?
In terms of the Act, the firearm, if it's not in the possession of the firearm owner, it must be kept in the safe. And the safe keys must remain with the firearm owner who is licensed. Unless the firearm owner is not at home and there is someone with a competence to possess a firearm, he can leave the safe keys to that person that is having a competence to possess the type of firearm that is in the safe.
Does competency mean you must have a license?
The competency, before you get a license, you must apply for a competency. And for you to have a competency, the designated firearm officers, that is we're calling DFOs at police station, he goes to your place of residence and do interviews with your family and check if you have a safe to keep the firearm that you're going to apply for, and inspect that the safe is in terms of the Firearms Control Act, the small safe that can be taken by anyone on their own must be bolted either on the wall of the house that is hidden in a hidden place, or else it must be bolted on the floor of the house.
Mm-hmm. And then, in terms of the license to carry a firearm, is there an expiry date to it? Does that license need to be renewed at any point?
We have different types of firearms. There is firearms for self-defense. It is valid only for 5 years. And then we have a firearm license for sport shooting. For occasional hunting, it is valid for 10 years. And then we have firearms licenses for dedicated hunters and sport shooters, Section 16. They are valid also for 10 years. Mm-hmm. Then when the license is 90 days before the expiry, it must be renewed.
Okay. Final one, Brigadier, is on just before, I think on Valentine's Day, we had a conversation with Gun Free SA. One of our listeners called in and asked about the assessment of the individual who is applying for a firearm. Is that sometimes, for instance, the person may have a history of violence and just terrible temperament or abusive temperament, but that is not on any official record. There's no case that has been ever opened against this particular individual. When it comes to the assessment of the applicant, are you able to drill into the temperament of the individual outside of the formal information that this person actually has a history of abuse?
When we are interviewing the spouse, that is where we get the information about the behavior of the applicant. We also interview the neighbors of the applicant to check if the applicant is anyone who is violent. And also we go further to check if there was any case that is reported of violence against that person. We go through all those processes, because when we are applying for competence, we take the fingerprints, we take them to Criminal Record Center to check if there is any criminal cases that is registered on that person's name.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. That is Brigadier Nonhlanhla Sikhakhane, who's the section head of the Central Firearms Register at the South African Police Service. When we come back, we speak to Montanique Bully, who's the Executive Director of Girls on Fire.
The Red Devils have a responsibility to ensure there's happiness at Old Trafford.
Swung in dangerously. What a header. Scott McTominay.
However, the Cottagers have an agenda to disrupt that plan.
Swings it in. There it is. It's 3-1. It's Rodrigo Muniz again.
This is the Premier League. Manchester United FC faces Fulham FC on Saturday, 24 February at 4:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Well, let's conclude the conversation around firearm users and then also licensed firearm users, that is, but also looking at the social responsibility that is required from these licensed gun users. Montanique Bully is Executive Director for Girls on Fire, which is a non-profit organization. Montanique, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Hi, Aldrin. Thank you for having us on your show. Just a quick correction. I am the Executive Director of GOSA, Gun Owners South Africa. Girls on Fire is a separate NPO that we work together with.
Oh, okay. No, appreciated clarity. But quickly speak to us about the social responsibility that is required for licensed gun users.
Yeah, so majority of firearm owners are very lawful citizens. We go through an extensive process to actually obtain a firearm license. Any firearm license holder will tell you that that's not an easy process to go through. We've got to do our proficiency training. We've got to have knowledge of the Firearms Control Act, which we get tested on. And the laws are very clear to us when we become firearm owners. And so obviously it's our right, and we have to take the responsibility to be lawful and act in a lawful manner and uphold the law that we were given firearm licenses for its lawful purpose.
Mm-hmm. So the call that we got yesterday that actually drove us to this conversation that we had now also for me indicates that there are people actually who are firearm license holders who have firearms. However, though, their interpretation of the law is very different to what is actually expected of them. Is there a way to upskill the person's knowledge about what to do and what not to do when it comes to firearms?
Yes, of course. The Firearm Control Act regulations is available, and we always remind firearm owners, go and read up, go and double check the sections that you're unsure of. GOSA is an organization where we help the public, if something happens or they're unsure of something, they're able to pick up the phone and clarify that with us. That's one of the services that we offer. The Firearm Control Act regulations was put into place to interpret how the Firearms Control Act needs to be applied and how it's regulated in South Africa.
What's your advice to those people? How frequently should they be doing that? Because I guess sometimes even amongst the groups, the conversations that they have could also be misleading.
I think they need to go over it until they confidently know it, and they confidently know when it's safe to use a firearm and the laws related to using a firearm and being competent, being trained. We always advise, go to the shooting range, be, training. It's a skill. Shooting is a skill that gets lost. And with that, you need to know the laws and you need to know how to handle your weapon safely.
Do you have an app by any chance where people can brush up on their knowledge, where they're being quizzed or something like that?
No, not to my knowledge, we don't, but we do have an active Facebook group. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, where people can just go, ask a question and we'll respond with the necessary sections in the Act and advice on how to act lawfully.
Thank you so much for your time. Monique Abuli is the Executive Director of GOSA. So please brush up on your knowledge of what you can do and what you cannot do as a licensed firearm owner. But Joe, I hope that you were listening to the conversation as well. It's a minute after 4:30, time for the news headlines.
A very good afternoon with the news headlines. Police say there will be maximum mobilization of resources along Gauteng highways during peak hour traffic after a group of men robbed motorists in peak traffic on the M1 near the Crown Interchange this morning. Western Cape traffic officials have arrested 2 people following the discovery of 42 bags of compressed dagga worth 4 million rand at Langsburg in the Karoo. And the SABC says it is committed to ensuring that the impasse it has with the signal distributor Santec is resolved. And those are your headlines. Details, 5 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Oh, it's a very heavy one this afternoon. We've got a big, massive backlog on the N1 South coming from Pretoria to Joburg. This would be worth staying away from and worth avoiding. It's a truck that's overturned before Allendale Road. 4 lanes are closed, 1 lane on the left open. Major backlogs as you come through from the old Johannesburg Road exit. That's how badly backed up. It's stacked for kilometres this afternoon. Northbound, there's a lot of interest in what's going on there. So there's a really big queue from Sandton making your way through the New Road. And before you get into the Mike 1 N1 North queue, There's also the matter of some delays coming from Parktown up into Sandton towards Grayston Drive as well. So if you're leaving Joburg, want to get through Midrand to Pretoria, it's a long haul today. But that southbound into the crash should be avoided. Also a collision on the R21 around Clayville causing some delays, plus a bit of the aftermath of rain causing backlogs as well, and a crash on the M1 North going up towards the N4 Emelacheni Highway Pretoria, backlogging traffic through to about Garsfontein. Durban today, the N3 out of town, slow moving through Sherwood towards Spaghetti Junction, and Cape Town fairly heavy backlogs out of the CBD. The N1 from the elevated freeway to Coburg interchange is heavy. The N2 and M3 routes out of town busy and slow to Hospital Bend after an earlier crash at Mowbray Main Road, which has been cleared, but the highways coming out of town stay busy. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
In sports this hour, starting off with football, the Confederation of African Football has reached an agreement in principle for the 2025 Cup of Nations to be played in July and August next year in Morocco. Earlier this month, CAF President Patrice Motsepe refused to confirm the dates of the next AFCON, with organisers left with little time to stage a qualifying competition where it to be held in January and February. The dates currently proposed are July the 20th to the 16th or 17th of August next year. And qualifying for the 2025 AFCON is yet to start, and a preliminary round is expected to be played from next month. Elsewhere, Manchester City will be looking to close the gap on leaders Liverpool when they face Brentford at home tonight. The game is played today after being rescheduled from December as a result of City's involvement in the Club World Cup, and a win would see City above Arsenal into second in the table, just a point behind Liverpool.
No, we love to have clean sheets. All the teams want it. We are not exception. We want the clean sheets and concede few and no concede goals. We want it. But at the end, we want to win games. And sometimes you have periods that defending well, but you concede goals. Sometimes you don't concede. Never since arrived, I was focused in clean sheet. The players knows it. We know it, but we try. I don't go to the players and say, "Oh, I have to take clean sheet." You say just clean sheet, they forget to play. They forget just defending and forget what you have to do. And you have to do is play better, concede few and attack better and create more chances. This is all my target every time. Every time I make a meeting with them or prepare a game.
That's City manager Pep Guardiola. Then in rugby, an experienced member of the Sharks pack veteran Lachlan Andrews has signed a short-term contract with Manchester-based Sale Sharks until the end of the season. The 28-year-old has played just 4 games this season, all of them as a substitute, and made his return from a red card and suspension against the Stormers in Durban last Saturday. The former junior Springbok has made 83 first-class appearances for the Sharks, but has struggled for consistency this season. In swimming, Team South Africa swimming head coach Rocco Mering insists that the level of competition at the World Aquatics Championship was higher than they had anticipated. Team SA secured only 1 medal at the recent World Aquatics Championships in Doha. However, Rocco believes that the team will bounce back at the Olympic Games in Paris in July and August. He also noted that the Olympic qualifying times are more difficult now compared to 4 years ago before the Tokyo Olympics.
Yeah, we should be worried because the level of competition at this World Championships, in my opinion, was higher than what I expected and what a lot of other international coaches expected as well. But that's not new. In the world of international competition, the bar gets raised all the time. And as I mentioned, when one goes, there's 2 or 3 others ready to take the place and to raise the bar. So from a confidence point of view, we have to be confident that we can compete. There's no question about it. And we've got nothing to not be confident about. But we also can't be ignorant about the fact that it's 4 years later or 3 years later after Tokyo, new people are there, the bar has been raised, the Olympic qualifying times are more difficult. And we're going back into another battle, into the unknown. And we don't know at what level the rest of the world will be competing.
In athletics, World Athletics is considering introducing a new format for measuring long jump takeoffs. A takeoff zone will be used instead of the traditional wooden bar where a no jump is called if the athlete's foot crosses the line. Now the jump will be measured from where the athlete's front foot takes off to where they land in the pit. Now the main aim of the long jump adaptation would be to reduce the amount of no jumps, with the region saying a third of all jumps at the 2023 World Championships did not count as athletes overstepped in pursuit of the perfect takeoff. On that note, it's a wrap from my side. I'll have more in the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumi Kapele.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.2 FM in Table Mountain.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it is time for a market update with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. So Kumba Iron Ore in the news on the annuals, and also looking at PHP's interim results.
Afternoon to Adrian and to the listeners. Starting with Kumba, this is another Anglo-American subsidiary which is looking to cut jobs. We are talking roughly 490 jobs, and over a number of years, Adrian, they have suffered significant losses due to the derailments in logistics infrastructure and equipment failures. And then as a result, the guys had to take a decision in Q4 following some product stockpiles peaking and at levels which are unsustainable, to say, hey, let us now start reducing our production. And they reduced their production for the year by 5.3%. And the logistic issues here, you are talking the failure of the likes of Transnet. And on the other hand, Adrian, global macroeconomic volatility and uncertainty continued, and locally load shedding and logistic constraints increased the cost of doing business. But the guys, they remain positive on the iron ore market fundamentals. That is, going forward, they should to be doing okay because they've got what they call higher quality iron ore, and that ensures that they are well positioned to meet the growing demand for the green steel. And the guys managed to increase their revenue by 16% despite all these troubles. And what we call profit as headline earnings per share increased nicely by 26%, and they continued to reward their shareholders handsomely because the final dividend for the year has been increased by 48%. And when we look at BHP, profit as headline earnings per share, unfortunately, expected to drop by 48%, and the dividend per share dropping by 20%, but revenue increased by 6%, and the external operating environment was relatively volatile, and their key commodity prices were slightly higher overall, but with significant variation in performance between the individual commodities. And they said the demand from China was healthy, and that's despite China having troubles when it comes to their housing market. And as a result, the guys maybe going forward might do okay.
And tell us about local and international market developments.
Then an interest rate cut in China failed to excite investors, even though it was bigger than expected. Markets expected a cut of 15 basis points, but we got 25. And sentiment struggles to pick up in the global markets. Worries about higher for longer interest rates and the faltering Chinese economy are still lingering. And our Q4 unemployment was worse than expected. We thought it would come at 31.6%, but it went to 32.1% from 31.9%, as social services and agricultural sector cut jobs, and the jobless rate may continue to rise as weaker commodity prices, load shedding, and logistic issues take their toll on mining company profits. And as we know, that profits means a lot to the owners of capital, and oil prices are flat with an uncertain outlook for global demand, knocking value of the crude futures contracts. And thus, despite some risk premium from Israel-Hamas conflict, Brent crude is just up a mere 0.08% at $83 a barrel, and the yellow metal is eyeing 2045 as investors investors awaited the minutes of the last U.S. federal meeting for more clues when it comes to interest rate cut timing. We see gold is up 0.5% at 2028, platinum is up 1% at 908, and the Dow is flat. S&P is just like the DAX, that down 0.2%. Food is also flat. CAC is up 0.1%, but the JSE is down a whopping 0.9%. Corrected by industrials, which are down 1.4%, financials are down 0.7%, and then resources are down 0.2%. The rand is 18.90 to the US dollar, 23.92 to the pound, and 20.47 to the euro.
Thank you so much. That is Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. We're taking your voice notes on 0614 104 107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Hi, Aldrin. Talking about competency or on usage of firearms. Talk to any policeman or any traffic officer on the road when they stop you and ask them when last did they go to the shooting range. You'll get a shock of your life. They'll tell you, the last time I went to a shooting range was when I was in training. And it could be 10, 15 years ago. So how will they be able to use those firearms when they only went to the shooting range when they were in training? Radipobe Midrand.
Aldrin, can you also guess what should happen when the family member who is owning the gun or firearm pass away? What should happen to that firearm? This is Michael Macheta, Mdini, Msasangeni.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Hey, Mara, Malisala here in Mpumalanga, but originally from Limpopo. Mara Aldrin, the brigadier, I don't think she knows what she's talking about, or maybe she's not sure. All she does is read the act. But in terms of explaining it, it's as if she doesn't even understand the act. It's worrying. But yeah, it's understandable on what the act says. My question is, earlier this morning we heard that there were people roaming around with pistols on the, is it M1, Mike 1 in Johannesburg?
Oh, yes.
I have a firearm in my car. What do I do? Do I stop on the side of the road, tell them hands up, and I call the police, but knowing 10-111, their response time is weak? Do I call the armed response security companies that we normally see on YouTube, like your Anton Kuhn? What does a person do in that situation? Do I just start shooting?
I think aren't you supposed to shoot is it a warning shot? Isn't it supposed to be a warning shot? But here's the other thing, guys. Is that you're the one who went out to go and get the firearm. You're the one who studied what the law says. You're the one who then passed the exam and you got your license. And you know what the law says. Don't now try to act outside of the law because you believe that the law is too lax. The law is the law. It is the law. We've had these conversations before where somebody's like, but the person broke into my house and, fear for my life and I decided to shoot. And next thing you're accused of murder. So if you want to see the laws change, maybe that's the thing that you need to be pushing for. But right now, you need to act within the confines of the law because the license dictates that is what you must be doing. 0614 104 107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Yes, the stats are out. Unemployment rate went up, but the relevant people, what are they going to do about that? Like your ministers, the president, what are they going to do about it? Because I feel like even next year, they're going to release more stats. Maybe at that time it would be like 40% unemployment rate in South Africa. But I feel like there's nothing that's been done. It's like affirmative action, BEE, but it doesn't look like it's helping. So I just want to know, what are those people going to do about it?
Hi, Aldrin. You know, Aldrin, sometimes I feel pain when black people are crying about unemployment. You know, go to the township. I'm here in Cape Town. Go to all the township. There's no like auto part shops, no bakeries, no butcheries, no nothing. Black are learning from white, colored, Indian to bring the same business in their own community, to create jobs, inspire other generation to know that it's not about working. Them also can create jobs. I don't know if what may be the problem. Only criminality, they've created a crime atmosphere. That is where unemployment is coming. So people have to change their mindset to learn from others. I think that will work. Thank you.
Yeah. And also, let's remind people, it is not easy to run a business. It is not easy to run a business when you have people who are expecting a salary at the end of the month, when you have logistical challenges in the country, when you have electricity challenges in the country. At the end of the month, there are people that are waiting for a salary. It is not easy. When you have clients and deadlines that you need to meet, but because of the electricity challenges, you are unable to meet those deadlines. It is not easy. It is not easy, guys. A lot of the time we would say to people, start your own business, start your own business, start your own business. Who's teaching them how to start their own the businesses? Who's teaching them about the acumen that is required to actually run the business, the temperament that is required to run that business as well? And by the way, guys, I don't believe that everybody is meant to become a business owner or an entrepreneur. There are certain people that are just made for that thing. There's certain people that you can teach, but it's definitely not for everyone. Coming up on the show, just after the break, we're in conversation with Ellen Broder, who is the CEO and founder of SA Harvest. Today is World Day of Social Justice, so we'll be speaking about that and also looking into hunger is more than a lack of food. It is a terrible injustice, as General Ban Ki-moon once said in 2015.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues, no more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Mzansi Africa.
Yalabuga.
Siyabulela nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Côte d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms, and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to Hollywood Bets for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asonye. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
By the way, we are streaming again. So we're back at streaming again. So you can find us on Facebook. We are streaming live on Facebook as well as X and our YouTube page as well. So we'll start reading some of your comments on Facebook and some of your comments on the YouTube channel. So those are the other platforms that you can use as well to engage with us and connect with the listeners. We're in conversation next with Ellen Broder, who is the CEO and founder of SA Harvest. As the world commemorates the Day of Social Justice, which is today, our next guest shares a relationship between social justice and food vulnerability by addressing the persistent challenge of hunger in South Africa and the urgent need for systemic change. His organization has supplied over 53 million nutritious meals delivered since its inception and has called for scalable, evidence-based systemic solutions that empower communities and foster longer-term resilience. To unpack his call, we speak to Ellen Broder. Ellen, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
How would you describe the plight of hunger in this country?
Well, there's one word I use every day, and that is catastrophe. And that's not exaggerating. Our food and hunger situation, our malnutrition situation is a catastrophe. the numbers are just show you. I mean, we have 20 million people on a spectrum of food vulnerability, from going to sleep hungry every night at the top, which includes millions of children, down to people who just run out of money. And we waste 10 million tons of food every year. And, on the waste alone, we'd be able to feed our children. Why aren't we? So I know today is a very important day in terms of social justice. And for me, it's a huge thing. It's been a passion of ours at SA Harvest to try and develop arguments to show the government how to fulfill their obligations in terms of Section 27 and 28 of our Bill of Rights. So Section 27 says every South African is entitled to enough food, and Section 28 talks about every South African child is entitled to enough nutrition, and entitled is not the right word, it is their right. And this is just patently clear that it's not happening. Our government is just not delivering on this, and as a result of it, there is a catastrophic situation.
Sorry, Ellen, has it always been catastrophic, or have we been down a downward slope?
So I think that it has been catastrophic for many years. I think that over time, especially during the apartheid era, it was obviously catastrophic, mainly for black people.
Mm.
And as the independence came and the new South Africa came to existence, what happened really is that we expected something from the ANC to deal directly with this issue, and nothing happened. So just by ordinary population growth, it has been exacerbated by time. And so I would say for many years now, this has been the case.
And what does that then mean for the Sustainable Development Goals, especially Sustainable SDG 2, which speaks about zero hunger by 2030, and mind you, about 6 years away from that?
Yeah, so I just missed the beginning of the question. Sorry, Aldrin. You said, what is that?
Okay, so what does this mean? You're speaking about us being on this downward slope, that it has been catastrophic, during apartheid as well, but there was the expectation that things would change under the democratic system, under the governance of the ANC. But what does this then mean for achieving the SDG number 2, which speaks to zero hunger by 2030, and we're only 6 years away from that deadline?
Okay, so excellent question, because what it means is that we can never do that. If the government doesn't get involved in processes that will end hunger in South Africa, we will never be able to do it. At the moment, yes, they do certain things in terms of grants, which are not enough, and other really insignificant processes. If they don't get their act together and start creating real change in the food dynamic, we will never reach that goal. At the moment, the people doing the most in this are NGOs like ourselves and people in civil society who are trying to do their best to feed people. And there are great problems involved in that. You know, one of the great effects, one of the great indignities of hunger is that hungry people believe that it's their fault. They take it upon themselves. They say, look, so many people do eat, I don't eat because I'm no good. And it's a terrible injustice there. And this is the fault of those in power, because it's up to those in power to create the framework, to create the environment in which people are able to access affordable, nutritious food. And that's just not happening. And the only people who can create that environment from a fundamental basis is the government. And the government at the moment is just not involved. And this is a terrible injustice.
But there are the food banks. Are those not working?
No, they are, Aldrin. The food banks are working. They deliver. I mean, we ourselves, not exactly a food bank, but very similar, have delivered 52 million meals. Organizations like Food Forward have delivered over time hundreds of millions of meals. They've been around for more than 20 years. And there are people. I mean, there's small organizations and food bank and outfields. It is working, but it's working in, when you take the entire picture as a whole, it is, it's like a drop in the ocean. I mean, the shortage over 20 million people going to in some sort of food shortage spectrum, the need is 20 billion meals a year. And when you take 10 million tons of food going to waste, it's about 30 billion meals. So what we do works within a framework.
Yeah.
And that framework, really is like Mother Teresa once said, if you can't feed 60 million people, feed one. So that's what we try to do, and we are all successful in that way.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that only the government can make massive changes very quickly.
Quickly tell us about your initiative and how exactly SA Harvest is able to rescue food. I see that your report saying that since 2019, you've rescued around 16 million kilograms of food that would have otherwise ended up on a landfill. So what does rescuing food look like?
Okay, so rescuing food, the actual operation is very simple. The food that I'm talking about, the 10 million tons, goes to waste in the food chain from agriculture through to manufacture and then through to retailers. We don't, also through to the home, but in South Africa, home waste is not very significant because poor people don't waste food. But we take the food that these food chain would throw away for various reasons. Either the carrot doesn't look right, or the label has gone wrong, or the dates, which are huge in this process, are about to be, the food is about to expire. So we rescue the food that these people would throw away onto the landfill, and it's always good food. It's always nutritious food for us. We make a real effort to do that, and we transport that to vetted beneficiary organizations throughout the country. And we do that, and we take it on a wholesale sort of basis, and the beneficiaries, they are the people who cook, make the meals, and beneficiate the food. So that's the food rescue.
And the food is still safe to eat?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we part of our strategy and the very basis of our operation is a highly developed and bespoke technology platform which can track food, trace food, check the dates, make sure that it's being safely stored, make sure that it's being safely delivered. We take that absolutely seriously. No one in the food business like us can take any risks and wouldn't want to.
Thank you so much for your time. Ellen Broder there, CEO and founder of SA Harvest. As today marks Social Justice Day, it's time for the news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Increased police mobilization on Gauteng highways in South Africa makes its case at the ICJ. Good day to you. The National Police Commissioner, Fanny Masemola, says there'll be maximum mobilization of resources along Gauteng highways during peak hour traffic after a group of armed men robbed motorists in peak traffic on the M1 near the Crown Interchange south of Johannesburg. Police spokesperson Atlenda Mate says no arrests have been made yet.
No cases had been reported as yet, and it is on this basis that we are encouraging anyone that has fallen victim to this crime to call the Johannesburg Central Police Station Commander. Engagements with the JMPD and other law enforcement agencies are ongoing in an effort to curb further incidents. We also have our tracking teams that are on the ground searching for these suspects.
Western Cape traffic officials have arrested 2 people following the discovery of 42 bags of compressed dagga worth R4 million at Langsburg in the Karoo. Spokesperson for the Department of Mobility, Rebecca Campbell, says officers found the drugs and counterfeit clothing in a truck. She says the 2 suspects have been charged with the possession of an illegal substance and dealing in counterfeit goods. The SABC Group CEO, Nomsa Chabedi, says the public broadcaster is committed to ensure that the dispute it has with signal distributor Centec is resolved. She was speaking during a briefing in Parliament by the Communications and Digital Technologies Department and various entities, including Centec. The SABC scheduled meeting to present its new corporate plan to the Portfolio Committee was postponed after the corporation sent a letter of apology. The SABC's approached the Competition Tribunal over the high tariffs by Centec. The SABC is currently paying Centec R20 million a month and still owes the entity. Chabedi elaborates.
As SABC, what we heard earlier, we thought was more of a comment regarding the impasse that has been reached by SABC and Centec. But I think what's important for us is that we need to reiterate that we continue to build our relationship with Centec. And that the way we understood the comment was that perhaps there could be other avenues that could be explored to help us arrive at the conclusion of the matter. However, as SABC, we are committed to, to resolving the impasse, and we continue to work with Centec on that matter.
The National Council of the SPCA says the vessel docked at Cape Town Harbour with 19,000 cattle on board will leave for Iraq tomorrow. Some of the cattle had to be euthanized. The ship is in the process of loading feed and is carrying the cattle bound for Iraq from Brazil. NSPCA spokesperson Jacques Peacock.
The sooner the vessel leaves, the sooner those animals reach Iraq, where they are bound for, because we would not want to unnecessarily prolong their journey.
South Africa's senior state law advisor Andres Stemmet has told the International Court of Justice at The Hague in the Netherlands that the right of self-determination is inalienable and is recognized by the United Nations. He says the people of Palestine must have permanent sovereignty. The World Court is holding public hearings on Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory. Stemmet says Israel's policies and practices have reached the threshold of apartheid practices. He says the court decades ago found South Africa's occupation of Namibia to be illegal.
Israel has occupied the Palestinian territory in the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem since the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. Annexed East Jerusalem and parts of the West Bank in that same year. It is not disputed that the acquisition of territory by the threat or use of force is illegal, irrespective of whether the territory was acquired through a war of self-defense or of an act of aggression.
Top story. The National Police Commissioner says there'll be maximum mobilization of resources along Gauteng highways during peak hour traffic. A group of armed men robbed motorists in peak traffic on the M1 near the Crown Interchange south of Johannesburg. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khoes.
And coming up in your sports this hour, 2025 AFCON to be played in July, August, and Mbappe agrees Real Madrid deal to join next season. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good afternoon. Here's the big one. It is the N1 coming south through Midrand. On your way to Joburg, having left Pretoria, it's an overturned truck just after New Road. It's between New Road and Allendale. Most of the lanes on the highway are closed. You'll probably still find yourself filtering into one lane. The backlog is severe. It's right back almost to Brockfontein interchange. You should just stay well off the N1 south this afternoon until that scene is being cleared and the lanes have been reopened, or at least more lane capacity. It's a very, very thick and heavy delay. The old Joburg Road running parallel, heavy. A lot of traffic around the old Joburg Road, the Samrand, the Olifants, the New Road on-ramps. This motorist scramble to get sort of on and off and in and out of that traffic. And then going northbound, due to the onlooking factor, the queue starts around about Melrose, maybe even Houghton Estate, all the way through to New Road. So very big delays there. If you're thinking of avoiding the M1 South and taking the R21, there's also been a crash just past Olifantsfontein as you come through Clayville into Tembisa. So that's quite heavy en route to the airport. And a crash on the R24 after Barbara Road, holding traffic on that route out towards the airport as well. Truck crash or truck fire recovery underway at Majuba Pass. So the N11 between Newcastle and Folkestone remains stuck in a heavy backlog of traffic. And Cape Town today, some queues out to Hospital Bend. Both the highways remain busy, and the R300 already queuing down towards Stock Road at Mitchell's Bay in the backlog there from the N2 highway. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
Imagine if you could save time like you save money. A second here, a minute there. Type a little faster, walk a little faster. Or you could stop scrolling on the internet. Just think of all the hours you'll save. Now what if you could take all that time and invest it? Watch it grow. Until eventually, one day, you'd have so much time that you wouldn't know what to do with it all. But unfortunately, time doesn't work like that. It can't be stored or banked. And unlike money, you can't make it back. That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do whatever you want to do, even if it is scrolling on the internet. Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
Mzansi Africa.
Siyaloboga.
Siyabulela nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Côte d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms, and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to Unilever for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asibonge. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Good afternoon. This is your captain speaking with just a little flight information. We're flying at an altitude of 37,000 feet and our airspeed is 400 miles an hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to BTH Airline. I'm your co-pilot, Aldrin Sampear, and I'm with you from 3 to 6, flying you through the turbulent airwaves. But the landing will be smooth.
So just sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the flight.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 9 minutes after 5 o'clock. Mense sê dit stink in Kaapstad. Mense van die Kaap? No, let's be serious. Mense van die Kaap? Hoe ruik dit nou? How's the smell? How's the stench smell? This afternoon. So yesterday, there was this story about there's just this smell in the city of Cape Town, and officials have been trying to find out what is happening? What is happening? Where is the smell coming from? Turns out that it's coming from a vessel that had docked at Cape Town to load animal feed. It has around, I think, 19,000 cattle on board, and that's where the smell is coming from. It's a vessel from Brazil, destined for, is it Iraq? Yeah, destined for Iraq, so it was just making a pit stop and then to get the feed. And as you heard now on the news, it is only going to leave start its journey again tomorrow, on its way to Iraq. But anyway, so there's just this stench smell in Cape Town that was reported on yesterday and into the early hours of this morning. I wonder what the smell is like. Anyone in Cape Town listening to us from Cape Town, tell us about the smell and whether it has subsided. So the SPCA has also intervened. There was a court order that they sought, and they went onto the dock, inspected the dock, and they are livid at the conditions in which those animals are being kept. Soaked in their own urine, soaked in their own feces, and you can just imagine the smell of all of that. And they have been on this voyage for around just over 2 weeks now. Just over 2 weeks. So we'll be speaking to Tony Broekhoven, who is the chairperson at Beauty Without Cruelty South Africa. Around 74,000 South Africans have signed a pledge that is calling for government to review the shipment of livestock and run a moratorium on the export of live animals, which is something, again, that the National Council of the SPCSA has also been calling for. So we'll be speaking to Tony Broekhoven around that. And then at 20 past 5, as you heard with what Markwa had said, we look at what's happening with Kumba Iron Ore. as there's an expectation that there will be jobs that will be cut in that mine. And then again, Amplats announcing that it plans to shed around 3,700 jobs. Again, COSATU, you may have heard in the news bulletin as well, have said that this 2.1% unemployment rate that we speak about is going to increase again in the next quarter because of these job losses in the mining industry. So we'll be speaking to Libowani Mamburu, who's the national spokesperson for the NUM. Your voice notes on 0614 104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086 000 2032. And just a reminder once again that we are streaming live on Facebook as well as YouTube. So I'll be taking your comments there as well.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
Good day, Aldrin, and all the SAFM listeners. Aldrin, I just want to give credit to SABC for having this SABC Plus platform, the app.
Oh, yes.
This is working proper. It's working proper. This thing, we always say negative things about the SABC and all the other state institutions, but then SABC is doing a great thing with this app thing. Just want to say shout out to all the management of SABC right now. You're doing a good job. Thank you.
It's Aris here in Cape Town. Yes, I understand what you're saying. It's not easy to start a business. But I think we're struggling a lot because we've been relying, you can see even our country is relying on asking on ads. While we got the possibility to have our own farms and agriculture, we've got the land where we can do agriculture. So you can see that we have a mentality of consuming and receiving. It's time for young people to learn how to produce and how to do things on their own. And that starts from young age. And these are the things we need to instill in our young ones so that we don't depend on always looking for a job, but we can now be entrepreneur.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
It is 14 minutes after 5 o'clock. In conversation next with Tony Brockenhoven, who's the chairperson at Beauty Without Cruelty South Africa. 74,000 South Africans have signed a pledge that is calling for government to review the shipment of livestock and run a moratorium on the export of live animals. This is in light of shipment of cattle that docked in Cape Town. The ship is en route to the Middle East and is set to depart tomorrow. To share their thoughts about the call that have been made to the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, we speak to Tony Brockenhoven. Tony, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. Okay, we seem to have lost Tony. We're going to try and get back to Tony. So again, if you are in the city of Cape Town, please tell us about whether you have smelled any of the stench that we have been reporting on that speaks to this report around the 19,000 cattle on that ship. Let's just quickly listen to some of those voice notes.
Hi, Aldrin. Yes, the smell is more like a manure. You know, it's quite a sexually it's a bad smell. I can say, but it's more like a manure. Yeah, I think yesterday it was worse.
Yeah.
Today I couldn't smell anything in town. Yeah, but yesterday on my way to work, it was very, very bad. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you so much. Somebody else saying that the smell was terrible. So today, much better. Let's speak to Tony Brockenhoven. We've got her back on the line. Tony, good evening. Thank you so much for making time for us. First of all, your take on what the National Council of the SPCA is reporting on the conditions that those animals were found under.
It's absolutely appalling, and I'd like to just take a moment to thank the Cape of Good Hope SPCA and the NSPCA for the horrific circumstances under which they've had to work. And I know that there are many people who've made light of, the smell in Cape Town. For us, it's been a day because the wind has been our way. For those animals, it's been almost 2 weeks standing in their own excrement and wee, and having their lungs and their passages burnt by the smell of ammonia. It is certainly nothing to laugh about.
Yeah, and then speak to us then about the importance of this issue around the livestock and the export of livestock, because on one end you have wild animals as well that are being exported, and there's a big market for it.
Quite simply, live export can never be humane. You have animals who are, especially, for example, the cows and the sheep who have hooves meant to go on felt, and they're going in on slippery hard metal that's unstable. They suffer motion sickness. They've got limited, if any, access to food and water, the real possibility of a fall, broken bones, or other injuries that go untended. In the summer months, they can literally cook to death. They call it heat stress, but the reality is they cook to death. And it is our collective shame that our government refuses to acknowledge the horrific suffering that these animals endure. I mean, it's bad enough they've been mutilated by tagging, branding, dehorning, or other standard farm practices, and that they'll be killed for some sort of notion of nutrition or sacrifice or ritual or habit. But to then further subject them to live export as well is most surely an insult to anything that is decent in humanity. And we are working along with other organizations and individuals to get the government to make a stand. Because the fact of the matter is, it's not just about money. There is more money to be made, if we're going to be brutal about it. There is more money to be made by having abattoirs that will create jobs, where these animals can be killed here and packaged here and sent overseas if that is what is required. Especially as it's going to countries where they want their animals to be halal.
Yeah.
But the MJC themselves have said, they've spoken out against the live export of sheep, for example, and they've questioned how the SA government could commit the shipping of tens of thousands of animals to the Middle East, because the meat from any animals who are not healthy is not halal. And the whole exercise makes a mockery of the Muslim prescribed swift and merciful killing of animals. I mean, halal meat by its very definition prohibits using anything that causes animal pain during their lives, during transport, or during slaughter. And there is no question that it is not possible to send these animals aboard a ship for weeks on end without there being immense suffering. And this is not about whether we eat animals or we don't eat animals. This is about basic decency.
Okay, so in this particular case, these animals are not exported from South Africa. These are animals that come from Brazil, destined for Iraq, and they docked here because they needed the feed. In this particular case, considering the call that you are making, how would that apply to this vessel?
They should not have been allowed to dock. Full stop, end of story.
What happens to the animals on board?
They're struggling anyway.
No.
Somewhere else.
Tony.
So no, hold on. Let's be reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
South Africa will not take a stand on animal suffering because, quite frankly, our government doesn't care. There would have been other places that would have taken them in. Australia refused to take them in, and so they've come here. If other countries can say, we do not agree with this is wrong, go away, they would have found other ports to stop. Either way, these animals are suffering terribly. That the SPCA had to take dead animals off and had to euthanize others because of the state that they were in speaks volumes. And the fact of the matter is that for all their time at sea, they will spend all that time, as I said earlier, in a situation where they will struggle to have access to food and water because there are so many of them. That's just the way it is. It's not possible, even if there's a vet on board, to be able to treat any of these animals. Again, due to the sheer volume.
Yeah. I wonder what then happens at the global level. You make the example of Australia, but Australia also earlier this year sent through cattle to Israel, and they had to come back because of the war that was taking place on the Red Sea. So Australia itself is actually party to exporting livestock.
Correct. Correct.
Sure. So they're no different to South Africa?
No. There is absolutely no need to do live export, given the fact that, from a religious point of view, it defeats the object of any exercise. And we really do expect the departments, the relevant departments, to now call in a moratorium on live animal export and allowing animals or these ships to come into port. I mean, in 2019, there was a policy statement from the Livestock Welfare Coordinating Committee, and this includes in its signatories, for example, the Department of Land Reform and Agriculture and the Gauteng Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, and farming representation and vet bodies and so on and so forth. And they said that there is plenty of evidence available to show that transporting livestock by sea is inherently dangerous to animal welfare, and that our international reputation will be enhanced if we take a principled position against this inhumane and unacceptable practice. The fact that they then recanted that statement is another story, but the livestock welfare, these people make their living out of animals. The fact that they said that livestock or live export is inherently cruel speaks volumes.
Tony, thank you so much for your time. Tony Broekhoven is the chairperson of Beauty Without Cruelty South Africa. 0614-104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086-000-2032, and remember that we're also streaming live on Facebook as well as YouTube, so I'll be reading your comments from those platforms as well.
Good day. I'm Madidaba Wasichaba, and these are your top stories. Reports state that SAMA award-winning, platinum-selling artist Vusi Nova is planning to get his lick back and tell his side of the story. After years of getting vilified by the media and becoming a victim of cancel culture, the star is ready to show the world who he is beyond the name and the fame, proving why Angeke Baskone as Mzansi gets to see him unapologetic, uncut and unprovoked. For more on this, catch Vusi Nova Unprovoked starting on the 2nd of March on SABC 1. I'm Madidaba Wasichaba.
Mzansi Africa.
Siyalobuga.
Siyabulela nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Cote d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to Unilever for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asibonge. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
0614-104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086-000-2032. In conversation next with Livuani Mamburu, who is the national spokesperson for the NUM. The mining sector is facing retrenchments as Kumba Iron Ore announced earlier today that the Section 189A processes are underway. The company has taken this decision in light of the deterioration of Transnet's railway network, which has slowed down their production output. The nation's largest iron ore producers will review 160 of its service providers and join Amplats, which has announced its plans to shed 3,700 jobs yesterday. This is happening less than 2 weeks after the mining Indaba. To share their perspective of labor to this news, the employability of workers in the mining space elsewhere, and what are the next steps, we are joined by Livuani Mamburu. Livuani, good evening. Thank you so much for making time for us. Job cuts everywhere. Actually, early this morning, we're also reading about, which is a different industry though, and this is on the textile industry, that Nike is also looking at cutting down jobs because people are not spending as much as they used to. But what we find now is on the industrialized sectors, like the heavy industry sectors, like the mining sector as well, that there are job cuts that are looming.
No, definitely. We are worried as the NUM, as you indicated, that yesterday Anglo Platinum issued Section 189, to retrench close to 3,712 mine workers. In fact, it's not only 3,712. It's 8,830 workers who have received Section 189 letters, which means they are likely to be retrenched. So that is what is happening. So today, we were also issued with Section 189 at Kumba Iron Ore, where the company indicated that they are likely to retrench 500. So with Anglo Platinum yesterday, on top of that, there are 620 contractors. So as NEM, we are deeply worried about these announcements of retrenchment. We anticipate that more companies in the platinum sector are going to issue Section 189 to retrench.
What's your plan then as a representative of Labour? Because also there is changes that is happening in the world of work and how we understand the world of work. And one wonders whether some of the people that will be retrenched from the mining sector, whether they'll be able to be reskilled, upskilled to find other jobs.
Now, one thing that I can tell you, the NEM has an artisan college where some of its members who are retrenched were reskilled and prepare themselves for future jobs, or they can go and work for themselves. We do have a college in Midrand, that artisan college. And also, but what you're saying is right, that with Anglo Platinum, their reason is that the platinum prices are very low in the international market. But we don't believe that. They are focusing on more on labor-intensive operations with the intention to mechanize in future. So they want to mechanize some of these operations where they are retrenching in large numbers. But like I said, with the NEM, we do have an artisan college that where we retrain and reskill our members, some of them who have been retrenched.
Are you able to take on like 3,700 people at once?
Not at once at the moment,
okay.
But this is what we're doing to deal with the challenges that our members are facing when it comes to retrenchment.
Okay, so as Labour, once again, what's your next step then to try and avoid these job cuts? Of course, they're pointing out to issues that are sometimes even beyond your reach as the NUM, but the NUM also has representatives, for instance, at Eskom. This is now members who work for Eskom. But what is it that you can do? Is there anything at all that you think you can do to try and stop these retrenchments from going ahead?
It's a difficult one, Aldrin, to be honest. But what we're going to do, we're going to participate in a 60-day of consultation meetings with these two companies, which is Anglo and Kumba Iron Ore, to try and find avoidance measures. Some of the avoidance measures when it comes to Anglo Platinum, I mean, the company has indicated that some of its operations are not making a profit. And we are going to indicate to them to say that if you are not making a profit, rather sell the operations to potential investors who can invest and try to avoid these job losses that we are seeing now in the mining industry, especially in the platinum sector and the iron ore industry.
Will you be asking on the minister to intervene?
No, definitely. This is a calamity. It's a calamity. The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy must intervene in this case.
Livwani, thank you so much for your time. Livwani Mamburu is the national spokesperson for the NUM. It's a minute after 5:30. Time for the news headlines.
Quick look at the headlines. An eThekwini municipal employee in KZN has been arrested in connection with interfering with the operation of the city's CCTV cameras. The National Police Commissioner says there'll be maximum mobilization of resources along Gauteng highways during peak hour traffic. And South Africa's urged the International Court of Justice to issue a non-binding legal opinion that the Israeli occupation of Palestine is illegal. Full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, conditions have just deteriorated significantly for motorists driving around Gauteng. It was already a very badly backed up afternoon, and now we've got a storm raging across the area. Thunder and lightning, heavy rain, a pedestrian lightning strike out at Blue Hills. 4 pedestrians have been hit in a lightning strike at the Blue Hills crossing. That's the R55 and the 562, so there'll be some EMS guys on the scene of that for a while. The N1 out of Pretoria, it's going to take for what's going to seem forever through the rain and down to a truck crash before Allendale Road. There's traffic literally all the way through from about Garsfontein Road down to Brakfontein and all the way down to Allendale. It is super heavily packed up. Northbound from Sandton through to about Rigel Avenue in Pretoria is pretty slow all the way through as well. Crash on the R21 towards the airport at Olifantsfontein Road, queuing traffic there. The R24 near Barber Road. On your way to the airport, there's also a crash, and there's just been a smash on the N3 North at Modderfontein Road, so getting up from Galuli's, that's heavy as well. Coming through Kloof, just outside Durban, the M13 coming into Kloof and onto Fields Hill, very busy if you're trying to get to Pinetown direction. Truck fire incident, Majuba Pass still being recovered, so there's some heavy traffic between Newcastle and Falkirk along the N11 route. And Cape Town, we saw this last night, seeing it again this evening. The M5, heavy backlogs through this time of day, moving up the Black River Parkway into the Kuberg at a change. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
In your sports this hour, Ivory Coast have appointed Emers Faye as the full-time head coach after he led the team to winning the Africa Cup of Nations title. And if you remember his remarkable story, the 40-year-old was an assistant when the tournament started last month, but took over the reins when Jean-Louis Gasset was fired when the Ivorians lost 2 of their 3 group games. They still managed to go all the way to win the tournament, and Faye's only previous coaching experience was with the juniors at French side Nice and as a coach of the reserves at Clermont Foot. Still staying with football, even after pointing out SuperSport United were short of numbers during the first half of the season. Head coach Gavin Hunt only managed 1 signing during the recent January transfer window. The Tshwane outfit brought in defender Keegan Allen after he became a free agent, having mutually terminated his contract with Morocco Swallows. And now with the latter part of the campaign now in full swing, especially after the AFCON break, the same issues still confront Hunt. SuperSport take on Cape Town City in the Nedbank round of 32 today, and Hunt adds that he's likely to go with a makeshift back 4.
Okay, I'll give you an example. So we play tomorrow night, we got 1 centre back. I play Sunday Egypt, I got 1 centre back, and I play the team that's lying second, I'm going to go 1 centre back next Tuesday. What would you do? Yeah, look, you got it. I mean, listen. We spoke about the Dondal game last year. Prioritising, I've got to prioritise. And as much as I want to do well in Africa, we don't have it. What am I going to do? You know what I'm saying? I mean, the club, we got to the final, the Confed Cup 5 years ago. SuperSport played TP Mazembe. They should have got relegated.
Meanwhile, Paris Saint-Germain striker Kylian Mbappe has reportedly agreed to join Real Madrid next season. Mbappe wanted his future sorted before March. So on the 13th of February, before training, he met PSG president Nasser Al-Khelaifi and told him that he is leaving and joining Real. The 35-year-old is set to sign a 5-year deal with Real, earning 15 million euros a season, which is just over 307 million rand. And that is plus 150 million euro signing on bonus to be paid over 5 years, and he will keep a percentage of his image rights. And if Croatia midfielder Luka Modric leaves this summer, then Mbappe would inherit the number 10 shirt that he wears for France. Then in athletics, World Athletics is considering to introduce a new format for measuring long jump takeoffs. A takeoff zone will be used instead of a traditional wooden bar where a no jump is called. If the athlete's foot crosses the line, the jump will be measured from where the athlete's foot front takes off to where they land in the pit. And the aim of this long jump adaptation will be to reduce the amount of no jumps, with the region saying that a third of all jumps at the 2023 World Championships did not count as athletes overstepped in pursuit of the perfect takeoff. In tennis, Carlos Alcaraz says that he needs to improve many things after suffering a surprise semi-final loss tennis in Buenos Aires last week to Nicolas Jarry. The two-time Grand Slam champion has endured a disappointing season to start of the season, having also slumped to a 4-set defeat by Alexander Zverev in the Australian Open quarterfinals. The world number 2 has not won an ATP title since his stunning Wimbledon win over Novak Djokovic last year, and the 28-year-old lifted the Rio Open trophy in 2022 before losing to Karen Norrie in the final 12 months ago. On that note, it is a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Tumin Kapel. Mudimugyo.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.6 FM in Bloemfontein.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for MoneyWeb Market Update with Jimmy Moyaha. Jimmy, there's a Billy in the air.
Good evening, Aldrin. Good evening to me. Good evening to the listeners. Hey, people have money out there. Just because you and I don't have $1 billion doesn't mean other people don't. The likes of Vukile, the property fund that has a portfolio of assets north of 40 billion rand, just finished finalizing their capital raising exercise, or it was a fast-tracked one. They raised about R1 billion that they intend to use to hopefully pay down debt, I suppose. But I'm going to be speaking to the company's CEO around that. They issued about 60 million shares to raise that $1 billion, and they got that at around 14.60 rand a share, which isn't too far from where the share price is at the moment. So we'll get a sense of what they're doing with those funds there. We're also going to speak to Avenge. They went through and reported their first half of the year's earnings and that performance there. The company's returned to profitability, which is good. We're going to get a look at the construction sector, what they're doing there. They've decided they now want to report their numbers their numbers in Australian dollars as opposed to South African rands. We're going to speak to their CEO, who's also an incoming CEO, around all the developments that are happening there and what it means for that business. We could potentially see them, I don't know, possibly delist in South Africa, which I only say that because about 90% of their revenue already comes from outside of South Africa. So we're going to see what that business still looks like and what it means for South African shareholders going forward. And then Kumba Iron Ore also put out a set of numbers there. They also announced that alongside that there's going to be, or there was a reduction in output, and that's led to job cuts, which is not a good thing. Yesterday we had the Amplats stable announcing those job cuts from their PGM side. So Kumba doing that is not going to be a good thing for our mining sector at all, but we're going to get a sense of how that is shaping up from that side of the business at least. And then we're going to chat to 91 as well, the asset manager, around investing offshore and looking at things like fixed income products where we think interest rates might have peaked and what it means for those that are in fixed income products. But before we get to that, the markets have had quite an interesting day with some movements up and down. Coming back into the fold is US markets. Obviously, they were closed yesterday, and Henko Creer has been keeping an eye on the markets for us throughout the day. He joins me now to just give us a sense of what's been happening. Good afternoon, Henko. Thanks, as always, for taking the time. It looks as though we are back below 19 Rand on the Rand dollar, and Bitcoin back towards 50,000, but still holding above 51, I suppose, at this stage.
Yes, Jimmy. Good evening to you and to Aldrin, and good evening to all the listeners. Yes, and overall, Jimmy, it's as if the markets are angry today because it's blood red on most of my screens. If we start off by looking at the US markets, at this stage the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 trading about 0.7% down, and then the Nasdaq really angry, 1.5% weaker at this stage. European stocks like the FTSE 100 and the DAX, those two finished 0.3% down today. And then a similar story here by us on the JSE, where the all-share index finished 0.9%. It's almost a full percentage that it lost today, and closing at a level of 72,946 points. And then the industrial index, 1.2% weaker at the end of the day. The resources index also 1% down, and then the financial index lost 0.4%. And I think some of the main contributors to the JSE losing a bit today were Prosus, BHP and Naspers. Prosus lost 2.7%, BHP finished 2.5% down, and Naspers 2.2% weaker at the end of the day. Also, your other large companies on the JSE like Anglo finishing 2.1% down, and Richmond and Standard Bank, those two losing 1.5% today. Other companies that lost a bit more than just that were companies like Supergroup, which finished 11% down today. Alphaman and Montauk, those two each 5% weaker, and then MTN and Tungela, they each lost 4%, followed by Motus and the MultiChoice Group, as well as Sasol, losing 3%. On the positive side, other companies, smaller and lesser well-known companies like Karoo, gained 3.5%. Then Clicks and Italtal, they each gained 3% as well. And Shoprite, Northam and Sibanye-Stillwater finished the day 2% up. Then on the commodities market, the price of gold is now $2,025 an ounce. Silver is trading at $23. Platinum still comfortably sitting at $910, and palladium now $976 an ounce. The price of Brent crude now $83.10 a barrel. And yes, the rand now well below 19 rand, currently trading at 18 rand 90 to the US dollar, 23 rand 92 to the pound, 20 rand and 46 cents to the euro, and 12 rand 42 to the Australian dollar. And Bitcoin now moving closer to $50,000, and that's just about R1 million. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you for that update, Henku. I think I have an answer as to why the U.S. markets aren't doing so well at this stage, and it's all to do with NVIDIA. That stock is down about 6%. It's back below $700 a share there. At some point, this was close to $750 a share, and it accounted for almost 25% of the S&P 500 moves. And they are still to drop results. So they're supposed to be dropping results today. We're expecting earnings numbers out of them, and I suspect those numbers might come in after close, but we'll keep an eye on that, and we will keep our listeners updated around that and potentially what it means for tech stocks going into the rest of the year. I think they're the last of the Magnificent Seven to report. And then, of course, tomorrow is the big day. We'll be around for budget speech. We'll be invading your show, Aldrin. We'll be having our show. Everything will be centered around Minister Enoch Godongwana and the conversations you've been having. I've got a lot of questions that I know I will be asking tomorrow. But for now, Aldrin, we're going to cross back to you, and we'll be waiting just around the corner.
Thank you so much. Jimmy Moya is back again just after 6 o'clock. And as he has alluded there, that tomorrow we Beyond the Headline will only start at 4 o'clock, and that's because we have the budget speech that will be delivered by the Minister of Finance tomorrow, Enoch Godongwana. So we will have a special broadcast focusing on the budget speech, which Jimmy Moyaha will be anchoring. That is going to be just after the announcement by the minister. I think the announcement, the speech is around 2 o'clock, and then after that we'll have that special MoneyWeb focus on the budget speech. We're taking your calls on 086 000 2032, your voice notes on 0614 104 107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Aldrin, can you ask your guest there, this section 189, is it not a scam between the employer and these unions to retrench people? Because if you can look, people who are going on section 189, most of the time they are being retrenched even if the company is able to even if the company is able to keep them still working. But this section 189 is a scam between the employer and these union officials.
Hi, Aldrin. I'm driving past that ship. The smell was terrible. It was like human feces. It was very, very, very bad. And now I can't smell anything at all. So kudos to the guys that worked on getting him at the SPCA Cape Town. That did very well to get that smell under control. Sure, Steve, Cape Town.
I'm very disappointed, Mariette.
Okay, let's. Unfortunately, it seems that the PC is frozen there. Let's quickly go to the line in the meantime on 086 000 2032. David is joining us from Pietermaritzburg. Good evening.
Thank you, Aldrin. Aldrin, the issue of unemployment of the black youth, for me, from the president down to the councillors, they don't have sleepless nights about this matter. Reason for that, Aldrin, if you look at the institutions of higher learning, look at the number of foreigners that are employed there, be it legal or illegal. Look at the number of foreigners that are employed there. Look at the hospitality industry. Look at the construction sector, number of foreigners that are employed there. Also look at the other opportunities that are there, like those spaza shops, the ones that are delivering food, riding the bikes. The question that I have, Alfred, how many of anybody who's employing them who have written or addressed a letter to the Minister of Labour stating that I'm unable to source a suitable South African, therefore can I employ a foreigner? Because for me, in the job opportunities that are there that they are taking, I'm definitely sure there are South Africans who are qualified, who have qualifications for those jobs, including teachers and nurses. So for me, the president down to the White Council, they don't have sleepless night about this matter. Let's look at the issue of spaza shops.
Okay.
The White Councillor should be ensuring that whoever is running a spaza shop is a person who's supposed to be
running the spaza shop. But remember the point that has been raised before, David, again, going back to the Department of Labour, is that they don't have enough inspectors. And when you speak to the Labour Minister, even if you speak to the previous Labour Minister, former Minister Olifant, should say the same thing. Unfortunately, we don't have enough inspectors. The same point that has been raised by the Department of Home Affairs as well. We do not have enough inspectors. We do not have the money because there's no budget. And then we have the austerity measures that are being put in place. So who should be doing it? And again, the Minister of Home Affairs has said that they're looking to collaborate with COCTA to come up with bylaws that would require for more restrictions or greater oversight around who gets a license, who operates, and who can do a business or do businesses in various places and various spaces. But it's going to go back again to there are already laws that say that this is what is required, but are there people to actually do the oversight that is required and also make sure that the laws of the country are implemented? That's another hurdle.
Hi, Aldrin. The sad part about this whole thing in regards to job cards, it's the fact that the communities are not even aware. They are not told anything. At least some of us, we are fortunate enough to be able to listen to SAFM and get this information. But then the ordinary people on the ground here, they don't know anything. One day we'll just wake up and all these minds will be gone. Thank you.
Aldrin, it is really so disgusting to laugh at animal cruelty. I'm very disappointed. Mariette.
Sorry, Mariette. Let me apologize. I wasn't laughing at the animal cruelty, but the joke or the giggle was more around the stench smell. And I didn't say that we're laughing at the animals and the state of the animals. And that's the reason why we had the guest on that we had on a bit earlier on, because we actually also think that it's an important issue and it's an important issue to discuss. So apologies to the people that were offended by the laughter, the light moment that I've taken from that moment there of the stinking smell in Cape Town. It wasn't laughing at the animals, wasn't laughing at the animal cruelty. And by the way, we do have a podcast available if you want to go and listen to that podcast about the interview that we had a bit earlier on around this issue, and also looking at the number of people that have been calling for a stop to the export of livestock. A bit earlier on, we were in conversation with Tony Broekhoven, the chairperson at the Beauty Without Cruelty South Africa. And as you heard during that interview as well, she also wrapped me around the knuckles. She was not a thing to make light of.
Mzansi Africa.
Siyalobuga.
Siyabulela nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Cote d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms, and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to McDonald's for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asibonge. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Free State Provincial Government, under the leadership of Premier Mxolisi Dukwana, will host the much-anticipated Free State Investment Conference. The conference seeks to promote the province as an investment destination through showcasing strategic investment projects. Do join us on the 27th of February 2024 at the University of the Free State's main campus in Bloemfontein. The Free State Provincial Government, harnessing partnerships, stimulating growth and development through investment.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
And remember that you can also leave us a comment on Facebook as well as YouTube. We're streaming live on those two platforms as well as on X. Skosana on our YouTube channel says that, hi, thanks for bringing in the expert regarding firearms. I'm going to apply for an extension license for my son. Thank you, Grootman Skosana there from Bloemfontein. Thank you so much. And then looking at some of the comments on Facebook. This one from Lo Nwabo who says that ndinimamela ukutilili dataless. Thank you so much for sacrificing your data to listen to us. Turara saying that, good day, Aldrin Sampear. This is my first time seeing you. Welcome. Let's get more people to join us on our Facebook page and watch the live stream. There was a comment a bit earlier on. Carol, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. Carol. Hi, Aldrin. Great live streaming. Will we get to see the team in the control room as well? Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see the team in the control room because the cameras are only in the main studio. And then somebody else was saying, can I see Tumi? Well, Tumi you can see. And they wanted to see Greg Gous as well. So, Greg, we need to speak about getting you a camera in your studio. But remember, our newsreaders are in the other building. So they're across the road. We're not in the same building, not even in the same room. They are across the road. And they read the news from the other side. This is from our SABC TV Park studios. That's where they read the news from. So unfortunately, you won't be able to see them. Hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to stream them live as well as they read the news. Let's quickly go to JCK, who's joining us from Musina. Good evening.
Hi, Aldrin. Are you well?
Good, JCK.
Are you well, Aldrin?
Good. You can go ahead. Thanks, man.
Yeah, Aldrin, do we still have Zamazamas today?
Is it a rhetorical question, JCK? Because yes, we do.
Yeah, Aldrin, the government is not doing enough vis-a-vis what the Constitution says about the safety of the nation. I would like I think on Thursday we are going to have a state of the budget address. I would like if the minister of of budget, to do something about Cheredeya subs. They must pump money into the police, man. I mean, the life of the people is in danger. I didn't just imagine waking up early in the morning, going to work, and you find those things. Huh? And even the police, they just see those people running into the bush. And they do next. They do nothing about it while the people are running in the bush. My South Africa, it's high time, man. Pump the money into the police so that and we must have that maiden robbery squad. Where's maiden robbery squad?
Okay, JCK from Musina. Let's quickly go to Muluko's joining us from Polokwane as well. Good evening.
Good evening, Aldrin.
So, quickly, your comment.
Yes, Aldrin, the issue of unemployment stats, to me, it's not like stats. This is a danger, Aldrin, because it is like a time-ticking bomb. Why don't you just give the people the land so that people can go and till the land? Let the rich people be ready to share the wealth of this country with the poor. Otherwise, the poor are already ready to share their poverty with the rich people.
Oh, Moloko, let's leave it on that note. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but there's a report that we spoke about yesterday on land restitution. Maybe you should go and look at that report. The other point that it notes as well is that unfortunately in some cases, and this is very unfortunate, in some cases where land has been given back to the rightful owners, they do not actually work the land, and that is a problem. But working the land also, again, requires money. You don't just work the land from nothing. You need money for the equipment to actually work the land. But we've come to the end of our voyage. Thank you so much for choosing Flight SAFM BTH 326 with me, Aldrin Sampear. Today we are playing out with Rex Rabanye Unketsang, and our parting shot is from Karen Salmonson, who once said, "Let go of the thoughts that don't make you strong." And Nkosi from Gqeberha is reading our credits this evening.
Sibulele kweli qela labadidiyeli abaqulunqa inkqubo onondaba nabahlomli nguye ke emva komboko umpondo zihlanjiwe uAldrin emaqhosheni ngasemva ngoThemba Tumi KG Khanya Vusi KC Kamugelo Charles siyakwamkela Untshu Ntinga Ntakandini kuJose Gqeberha.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And thank you to everyone who's joining us now on our streaming service. That is on Facebook as well as YouTube. Unfortunately, I can't read all of the comments right now. But yes, it will be streaming on all of the other shows as well, especially the daytime shows. I'm not too sure when they will be extending it to the evening shows. But the weekday, daytime shows, you can catch all of those presenters while they are behind the mic. Dotins, enjoy the rest of your evening. Remember to love each other and lead with compassion.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Municipal employee arrested over Durban cameras and increased police mobilization on the highways. Good evening. An eThekwini municipal employee in KwaZulu-Natal has been arrested in connection with interfering with the operation of the city's CCTV cameras. The employee faces charges of theft, sabotage and damage to municipal infrastructure. The municipality's Vincent Gubane says they've spent thousands of rands to repair the damage.
When we conduct